Chapter 920, Beating. How dare you? Xiang Qingyun reprimanded immediately. Disturbing the left minister would cause all of them to be severely punished. Yet Ling Han turned a deaf ear to his rebuke. His complete focus was on the 6 techniques returned to 1. Even if the other man's voice was as loud as thunder or shook the earth with its reverberation, he would not know, either, what more when Xiang Qingyun was only verbally reprimanding him like now. The left minister only spread out his hand and stopped Xiang Qingyun, though. An expression of surprise appeared on his face. This was a state of enlightenment. For cultivators, enlightenment could even be considered their utmost important fated opportunity. What was enlightenment? A dilemma that you could not understand no matter how hard you thought about it during normal times would suddenly be resolved and understood. Or, in other words, you would gain some idea of the outline, or a hint, when it was possible that you might understand completely. The understanding belonged to the individual. There were indeed alchemical pills or divine fruits that could aid one in understanding something, but they would only provide aid. It was not a guarantee of success. The moment you went into enlightenment, there could be an improvement in your cultivation that had stagnated for 100,000 years. For example, in the case of the left minister, he currently was at the peak of the minor levels of the heavenly body tier, but without a special fated opportunity, it was possible that he would not be able to advance into the middle levels in this lifetime. What he lacked was merely a sliver of enlightenment. Seeing Ling Han sink into a state of enlightenment, even the left minister could not help but feel a hint of jealousy. If he could also experience enlightenment, perhaps he would be in the middle levels of the heavenly body tier 10 years or 100 years later. Even if it looked like just a gap of a minor cultivation level, breaching this step was no less than crossing the distance from the ground to the clouds, and one's battle prowess would increase by at least tenfold. He could not help but smile in spite of himself. He actually became jealous of a little cultivator in the shattering void tier. However, it was actually nothing good to enter enlightenment too early. That was because the gods would definitely not favor one person too heavily and always allow them to enter into enlightenment. Usually, even a genius would only encounter 1 or 2 chances of entering into enlightenment in his lifetime, and one with nature-defying good luck would have this kind of opportunity only 4 to 5 times at most. Hence, the higher the cultivation level when one experienced the time of enlightenment, the more valuable this chance naturally would be. Xiang Qingyun could not help but look shocked and jealous. The Lord Left Minister actually waited on the sidelines for Ling Han to awaken? What kind of treatment was that? In the whole world, only one person would be qualified to have the Lord Left Minister wait. The Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. Now, a mere shattering void tier cultivator would actually have that kind of special treatment, so how could Xiang Qingyun not feel shocked and jealous? This moment of enlightenment lasted for about 2 hours. Ling Han's eyes suddenly snapped open, and he looked like he wished to continue. He had had great enough improvement on 6 techniques returned to 1, but he had awoken slightly too early from enlightenment, and had not reached the level of perfection. Once he came back to his senses, he realized that he had sat down cross-legged in enlightenment at a really inopportune time. He hurriedly stood, and saw that the left minister was presently looking smilingly at him, whereas Xiang Qingyun was wooden and expressionless, exuding an air of coldness that would make others keep a respectful distance. I suddenly had a flash of comprehension, and completely forgot everything else. I ask for Lord Left Minister's forgiveness for my disrespect, Ling Han said politely. It's all right. The left minister was still very magnanimous. How could one who could ascend to as high a position as he, and cultivate to this kind of high cultivation level, be anyone ordinary? He cast a look at Xiang Qingyun, and said, "Qingyun, leave us first." Xiang Qingyun was initially stunned, then, he practically could not believe his ears. Lord Left Minister actually had something that he was going to keep hidden from him? Moreover, he wanted to speak privately with Ling Han. Xiang Qingyun was already jealous of Ling Han, but now his jealousy naturally reached its peak. But no matter how arrogant he acted due to the left minister's favor, he did not dare disobey the left minister's words. He merely said a word of assent, then turned and left. But the instant his eyes swept over Ling Han, an incredibly cold chill appeared in his gaze. Ling Han could not help but feel baffled. He had offended him just like that? After Xiang Qingyun had left, the left minister picked up the shears once more and began trimming the flower pot. He did not speak, so Ling Han would naturally not take the initiative to ask. He stood on one side, hands at his sides. After a good while, the left minister finally put down the shears, and asked casually, "Wei Wei has been helping you do business recently?" These words could either be taken seriously or lightly. If they were to be taken lightly, the issue would be settled with a smile. But if they were to be taken seriously, "You actually had the daughter of the left minister do errands for you. Who did you think you were?" Ling Han paused for a moment, then answered, "Indeed, I have been doing some business with the fourth young miss and Miss G. The two young misses are only interested because of its novelty, and think that it's fun." The left minister laughed and said, "Looking at the energy that girl is brimming with, it does not seem just like playing around. Instead, she seems to be very enthusiastic. No matter what the fourth young miss does, she has always been serious." Ling Han offered a word of compliment. The left minister could not help but laugh loudly. He certainly knew that these words of Ling Han were not to be believed, but the daughter he doted on the most was this youngest daughter of his, so hearing these words naturally made him greatly pleased. He nodded, and said, "It's rare that this girl would focus on doing something. I feel very gratified." Ling Han released a breath of relief internally. This matter was now over and done with. The left minister would not look into his fault for making use of Li Weiwei. He was obviously letting Li Weiwei become rich with him, so why did the situation now seem like it was Li Weiwei that was doing him a favor? From this, it could see how skilled Ling Han was in handling matters. If it was anyone else, he would definitely be in fear and trepidation, and prostrate himself in front of Li Weiwei in utter gratitude. The left minister once again picked up the shears. As he trimmed, he said carelessly, "Wei Wei has just about reached the age suitable for marriage. However, I am very worried, and fear that she would be fooled due to her young age." Ling Han could not help his heart throbbing loudly. Although the left minister had not clearly pointed fingers, he was obviously talking about him. It looked like the fact that he had been too close with Li Weiwei these days caused the left minister to feel displeased. No matter how monstrous the talent that Ling Han showed was, his current cultivation level was really too low, so how could he be a suitable match for the princess of the left minister's residence? Even if there was just a sliver of a chance, the left minister wanted to nip it in the bud. One that can be a suitable match for fourth young miss would have to be one of the noble young masters of the 7 generals at the very least, Ling Han said. This could be considered his expressing his stand on this matter. The left minister was very pleased. This person from a small world was very clever. He merely needed a little hint, and would understand everything. He paused for a while, then said, "Every 10 years, the 3 great majestic empires would carry out a competition. There are 2 rounds for the Shattering Void tier and Mountain River tier, respectively. This year, the competition for the Shattering Void tier would be conducted. Every empire would send out 10 people, who would take turns to defend their position. The first one to have all 10 defeated would be placed last, whereas the one that can last until the end would be ranked first." He looked at Ling Han, and said, "You will battle on behalf of the left minister's residence." Fuck, it was obvious he was being asked to work here, so why did the left minister still look like it was Ling Han who had been done a favor? However, he presently had also been labeled with the sign of the left minister's residence. Then, if the left minister wanted him to do something, how could it be that it was necessary to still ask his opinion? He was a mere Shattering Void tier cultivator. Yes. Ling Han nodded. However, this matter involves the pride of a whole empire. Even if I nominate you, you may not get through. The left minister then said, "Hence, you have to defeat all other competitors to obtain the honor of representing the empire in battle." Yes. Ling Han said, but he thought, if I could help the Chaotic Star's majestic empire get first place, would I get some kind of reward? Since the left minister had mentioned that this matter concerned the pride of a whole empire, then the rewards given for attaining the first place shouldn't be too unpresentable, right? With such thoughts, Ling Han found his motivation. You may leave. The left minister waved him away. Chapter 921, Private Pledge of Marriage. Ling Han left the garden, and saw Xiang Qingyun was presently waiting at the doors. When he saw Ling Han, an uncontrollable coldness filled his eyes, but before he even opened his mouth to speak, he abruptly tensed up, and appeared to be seriously listening to something. Yes, he quickly said into empty air, turned, and entered the garden. Obviously, he had gotten a summons from the left minister. Ling Han could not help but shake his head. Actually, Xiang Qingyun could be considered a genius himself. He had done his investigation, and Xiang Qingyun's results were outstanding whilst in the academy. He had merely taken over 700 years to reach the higher levels of the mountain river tier. Yet, he chose to leave the academy, and follow the lead of the left minister. With the backing of a huge tree like the left minister, it was true that even elites of the sun-moon tier presently dared not put on airs in front of Xiang Qingyun, and he truly appeared very grand, but in front of the left minister, he was like a dog. If he was told to head forwards, he would not dare step back. What meaning was left in a life like that? Ling Han would definitely not be able to do so. Cultivators, in the end, should place greatest importance on their own cultivation. Taking advantage of opportunities to curry favor is ultimately not the true path, Ling Han thought. However, he had no thoughts of convincing Xiang Qingyun. This path was one that he had chosen on his own, so what need was there for others to interfere? He returned to the academy, and focused on cultivating his 6 techniques return to 1. After the enlightenment he had experienced at the left minister's residence, he had advanced a great deal further on this path. He was certain he would be able to improve his strength to the maximum limit of 20 stars in a half-year's time. Another day passed, and a shocking piece of news exploded in the academy. Ling Han and Shui Yenyu had privately pledged love for each other, and were already a married couple. When the news spread out, it could be claimed that the whole academy was boiling over. Who was Ling Han? The majority was still not sure, and only a very few knew that he was the student who had got the first place in this batch of new students from the northern institution's enrollment. He had passed through 8 levels, and in the future, there was a chance he could become a 4-star genius. However, Shui Yenyu was definitely a well-known figure. Firstly, she had already been one of the twin pearls of the imperial capital before she was 20. However, it was only after entering into the academy that she was replaced. After all, the immortal realm was a place where beautiful women were hardly lacking. But if all the beautiful women of the last 10,000 years were to be ranked, Shui Yenyu would definitely be capable of ranking among the top 3. In fact, it would be no surprise for her to be even ranked in the first place. She was as beautiful as a fairy, and as beautiful as peach flowers. She was a beauty who would even bewitch ascetic cultivators with her charms. Otherwise, how could it be that Zhao Luan would speak up and declare that he had set his mind on her becoming the future madam of the Zhao clan? Indeed, the reason that Shui Yenyu was even more well-known was Zhao Luan, the son of the great general Zhao, a genius that could go into the history of the academy. Everyone knew that Shui Yenyu was his forbidden domain, but now, someone actually dared to rob him of his cherished person? Who was this? His courage was really too overwhelming. Then, all of Ling Han's information was dug out. The first place holder of this batch of newly enrolled students of the Northern Institution. Passing through 8 levels. Being skilled in alchemy. Originating from a small world. An emperor that had opened the skies. The last bit of information was extremely shocking. That was because in the eyes of the majority, opening the skies was something that only existed in legends. Even in the immortal realm, there were few whose power could reach 20 stars of shattering void tier, and it was already quite impressive to reach 15 stars in a small world. Even with the boost from power of the nation, it was impossible that they would be able to reach the level of 20 stars. How could they open the skies, then? Impressive, he could reach battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier even though he had come from a small world. No wonder he could pass through 8 levels and be ranked among the top geniuses. But in front of the Zhao clan, all that was meaningless. Ling Han merely relied on the left minister. Unless he was the actual son of the left minister, what qualified him to compete with the son of the great General Zhao over a woman? Many were waiting to see how Ling Han would deal with this matter. This Zhao Luan had already spoken up in public that when he had graduated from the academy, he would marry Shui Yenyu, and had obtained the agreement of the Shui clan. Blockhead, blockhead. Li Weiwei, meanwhile, had raced over in excitement. Have you really got married with big sister Shui? Ling Han cast an eye on her. Wasn't all this because of her? He said calmly, and what about it? I really couldn't tell. You are not amazingly handsome, nor do you know how to delight women, so what do you have that big sister Shui would fall in love with you? Li Weiwei supported her chin, appearing very confused. Even my maidservant would not fall in love with you. Strange, could it be that big sister Shui has been bewitched? Ling Han could not help but be dumbstruck. This fourth young miss really spoke such hurtful words. Even if you were the daughter of the left minister, and not many would become hostile after hearing you say such words, with such low emotional intelligence, how many would really be sincere towards you? However, you're going to be in great trouble. Not only is that guy, Zhao Luan, a martial arts genius himself, he also has 3 followers. Each one of them is a genius among geniuses, and he needs only issue a simple command, and his lackey would do this to you. She made a motion of a blade passing over the neck, and on the second day, your dead body would be abandoned in the streets. Ling Han sighed, and said, couldn't you say some good words? Beg me. Li Weiwei planted her hands on her hips. Though Zhao Luan is very strong, I am not afraid of him. Beg me enough to make me happy, and I could step out to protect you. Forget about it. I have not much interest in becoming a slave to another, Ling Han rejected decisively. Li Weiwei was instantly furious. Did this damn blockhead know that even she had to go through a mental struggle before opposing Zhao Luan? The power of his Zhao clan was in no way inferior to the left minister's residences. Furthermore, when one had reached such heights as they, the attitude of the youths never represented merely the youngsters. What if news spread that the left minister and the great General Zhao were on poor terms? Wouldn't that create a chance for the left minister to be criticized? This damn blockhead actually refused so quickly, and was unworthy of her kindness. This was practically enough to kill her with fury. Humph, who cares if you live or die? Now that her temper had risen, she suddenly raced off. Ling Han's expression was calm. When he agreed to Shui Yenyu's request, he had already foreseen the consequences. But, he believed that even Zhao Luan would not dare to publicly commit a crime in the academy. There were still some rules which he had to adhere to. The Zhao clan, after all, was merely the clan of a general of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, and not the emperor's family. Counter soldiers with arms, and water with an earthware one. What was there to be afraid of? Oh, Yenyu has really admitted it herself? Under a waterfall, a young man was presently standing with his hands crossed behind his back. Behind him, there were 3 images of mountains and rivers. Shockingly, he was a being in the higher levels of the mountain river tier. Upon closer examination, his mountains and rivers were unlike those of the others, whose mountains were green and waters were clear. They were flickering with a red light and exuded a terrifying air instead. Yes, young master. A young man was half kneeling behind him. Hi's expression was both reverent and passionate, as if this man in front of him was a god. This young man that was presently standing with his hands crossed behind his back was precisely Zhao Luan, and the young man that was half kneeling was one of his followers. His name was Zhao. He was presently informing Zhao Luan about the matter of Ling Han and Shui Yenyu marrying each other. He was very enraged. Shui Yenyu was a woman their young master had his eye on, and that was her good luck that she had accumulated over several lifetimes. Yet, she was not only cool towards their young master, but she actually even cuckolded him. She practically deserved to die 100 times over. Zhao Luan laughed loudly, shook his head, and said, "What trouble? Looks like I have given her too much freedom." "Oh, right, what is that man's name?" "Ling Han." Zhao answered quickly. Have someone send this object to him. If he is willing to accept obediently, then spare his life. Zhao Luan casually tossed out an object from his spatial spirit tool. Zhao's eyes swept over the item. He could not help but smirk coldly, and answered, "I will do as you bid, young master." Chapter 922, Zhao Luan's Gift. Ling Han, come out. Ling Han was in the midst of cultivation when he heard a cold shout ring out. He walked into the courtyard and opened the doors to take a look. There were two young men presently standing outside, and they were both in the shattering void tier, but he recognized neither of them. They were not from this batch of new students that had enrolled into the northern institution, but could be from the last batch, or the batch before that. "What can I do for you?" Ling Han was calm and collected, though he already had a rough guess. "That is senior brother Wang Wan. And there's senior brother Zhang Qing too. They are both subordinates of senior brother Zhao Luan. Pay, how could they be qualified? They are the subordinates of the three great followers of senior brother disciple Zhao Luan. Their gods know how far away from senior brother Zhao Luan. Still, the fact that they would appear now means they must definitely be here on behalf of senior brother Zhao." Of course, Ling Han actually dared to try and snatch senior brother Zhao's woman. It would be strange if there was no reaction from senior brother Zhao. One after another, courtyard doors opened, revealing multiple faces. A great many were wearing cold smirks, appearing to be delighting in Ling Han's miseries. This was very natural. Not only was Ling Han the first place of this round of new students, he even managed to seduce senior sister Shui Yenyu. She was an unprecedented beauty, so who would not be jealous? Ling Han heard all this, and made an "oh" internally. He knew that Zhao Luan would definitely make a move, but the latter obviously had not taken him seriously, and had only sent two shattering void tier cultivators here. Was he planning on using violence? Wang Wan, meanwhile, smirked coldly. This guy that came from a small world was really ignorant. Did he think that just because he opened the sky, he had the right to do as he liked in the immortal realm? They would teach him the rules today. "We have come under command of senior brother Zhao Luan to deliver a gift to you," he said. When those around them heard this, they were all puzzled. Was there something wrong with Zhao Luan? Ling Han had snatched your woman, and you still wanted to give him a gift? Ling Han was internally calm, and asked, "Oh, what kind of gift?" Wang Wan and Zhang Qing shared a look. Wang Wan took out a brocade box from his spatial spirit tool. It was wrapped very beautifully, but it was not very big. He held the box in his hands, and said, "Quickly kneel down to receive your gift." "Kneel down to receive it?" Ling Han laughed raucously. "Has something gone wrong with your head? It's a great gift from senior brother Zhao, yet you dare not kneel to receive and offer your thanks?" Zhang Qing countered sinisterly. Ling Han waved his hand dismissively, and said, "If that's the case, then you can just take this gift back with you." "I cannot accept." Wang Wan humphed, and said, "It's a gift that senior brother Zhao has given out, how could it be taken back? If you do not want to kneel and receive the gift, fine. Just take it." He nodded at Zhang Qing. Zhang Qing got the signal, and began to unwrap the brocade box. Everyone was curious. What kind of gift did Zhao Luan give Ling Han? None of them thought Zhao Luan was a person easy to deal with. On the contrary, this genius was an arrogant bully, and was well known for his forcefulness. The silk cloth outside the brocade box was unwrapped, and Zhang Qing opened the box in front of everyone's eyes, revealing the contents of the box. Abruptly, complete silence descended. The item inside this brocade box was actually a dog's collar. The meaning could not be clearer. Zhao Luan was going to treat Ling Han like a dog, taking him to his side and ordering him about. Such contempt. Such humiliation. In my eyes, you were a mere dog. Ling Han, senior brother Zhao said that if you accept this gift, your life will be spared, Wang Wan said with a smile, his face filled with arrogance. Shua, everyone's eyes turned to stare fixedly at Ling Han. Accepting this gift, he would be Zhao Luan's servant and lackey, but if he did not accept, his only fate was death. Who would dare treat Zhao Luan's words as a mere joke? Unless Ling Han hid for the rest of his life in the academy, wouldn't it be too easy for the son of the great General Zhao to kill a shattering void tier cultivator? What was he going to do? Whether he accepted this gift or otherwise, Ling Han was finished. There was nothing else that could be done. From the moment that Ling Han and Shui Yinyu were entangled together, his fate was already destined. A flash of fury flickered in Ling Han's eyes, yet his expression was frighteningly calm. He looked at that dog collar and strode out. Was he planning to accept? True, compared with his life, what would dignity count as? Furthermore, becoming Zhao Luan's dog, a great many were more than willing to do so, though Zhao Luan did not consider them worthy in the least. Wang Wan's and Zhang Qing's lips curled up, and their faces were painted all over with as expected. Who would not be afraid of death? Ling Han stretched out a hand and grabbed the collar. Then, in a sudden burst of force, Pennsylvania, this collar was instantly snapped in two in his hands. He carelessly tossed it onto the ground, and said calmly, "Pass the message to Zhao Luan. I appreciate his kindness, but I do not have the fortune to enjoy." Pa! The dog collar was thrown onto the ground, and a crisp sound of impact rang out. Once again, complete silence fell. Ling Han was planning to stand against Zhao Luan. Where had he gotten such courage and confidence from? His opponent was Zhao Luan, the only son of the great general Zhao Luan, and an elite in the higher levels of the Mountain River tier. He was also rumored to be a 3-star genius. What qualified you to oppose him? How dare you actually dare to break senior brother Zhao's gift? Do you know what great crime you have committed? Wang Wan shouted in harsh rebuke. Ling Han's eyes were cold as he said, "After being brought something like this to humiliate me, should I not smash it? The two of you get out here immediately, don't annoy me with the sight of your faces. You are already a dead man, and you still dare to be arrogant?" Wang Wan said icily. "Pa!" Ling Han stretched out a hand, and picked him up in a single move. With his current abilities, those with battle prowess below 20 stars were naturally no match for him. He squeezed Wang Wan's neck, and retorted coldly, "Since I am already a dead man, I would not mind dragging a few people to be buried next to me." Wang Wan instantly felt all his hair stand on ends. He did not have the slightest bit of resolve to give up his life for Zhao Luan's sake. He had no enmity with Ling Han, and if he died, then wouldn't that be a great loss? "No, no, no, don't kill me," he uttered in a trembling voice. "Coward." With a careless toss, Ling Han threw Wang Wan out. The academy allowed spars, but definitely did not allow killing nor crippling. Ling Han had never thought he was a dead man, so he was naturally not going to throw himself in just because of a nobody. "Get lost," he shouted. Wang Wan and Zhang Qing quickly left with their tails between their legs. They were indeed not weak, but how could there be anyone that was Ling Han's match in the shattering void tier? "You've forgotten something." Ling Han raised his foot, and kicked the broken dog collar over. Wang Wan caught the collar, but did not dare delay his departure, his dejected figure soon disappearing from sight. Everyone that witnessed this only felt that though Ling Han managed to be forceful this time, what about afterwards? While the academy forbade higher-level students to make a move against lower-level students, Ling Han could not possibly stay in the shattering void tier forever. The moment he advanced into the lower levels of the Mountain River tier, cultivators at the peak of the lower levels would be able to forcefully challenge him. It was true that you were a 4-star genius, but the academy similarly did not lack 3-star and 2-star geniuses, and they could still torture you till you were in so much pain that you wished you were dead. Moreover, could you stay forever in the academy? Everyone shook their heads. Obviously, Ling Han's days were numbered. Luo clan residence. Luo Hongdao summoned Luo Ba, and asked, "Have you completed refining the blood tier stone?" "Yes, Lord Patriarch." Luo Ba was filled with confidence. His current battle prowess was as high as 21 stars, which puffed him up with pride. That lowlife has become deadly enemies with Zhao Luan, and it is destined that he won't live long. Luo Hongdao said. You'll immediately go and challenge that lowlife. Otherwise, if he died in Zhao Luan's hands, there would be no chance for you to wash off your shame. Additionally, if you kill that lowlife for Zhao Luan, we may be able to get a connection with a great tree like the great General Zhao. Yes, Lord Patriarch. Luo Ba smirked coldly. He could no longer wait to kill Ling Han. Chapter 923, An Unexpected Prophet. On the next day after Zhao Luan delivered his gift, Luo Ba issued a battle notice, intending to challenge Ling Han to a battle to the death. It was not an ordinary spar, but rather a fight where only one would come out alive. In the Scarlet Heaven Academy, if both parties were on the same cultivation level, for example, both were in the lower levels of the Mountain River tier or in the Shattering Void tier, they were free to spar with one another. As long as one side wanted to battle, there was no need for the other person to agree at all. But this kind of spar could not end in permanent injury or death. Otherwise, the academy would pursue the offender as responsible. Hence, if you wanted a battle to death, there was a need to publicly make an appointment for the battle and obtain the agreement of the other party before the fight could begin. In this way, no matter what the conclusion was, neither side would have to bear any consequences. However, in so many years, there were pitifully few such duels that actually took place. A battle to the death. Everyone in the academy was astonished. Although not many people favored a cultivator that came from a small world, Ling Han was a different story. He was an emperor that had come by opening the sky, and this meant that his abilities had reached the extent of 20 stars. Moreover, Luo Ba should be even clearer about the gap in power between himself and Ling Han. Previously, he had been on the receiving end of 2 slaps from Ling Han, and was absolutely powerless to do anything about it, yet now, he actually challenged Ling Han to a death battle. Had he been bewitched or something? Could it be that Luo Ba had a major improvement in his abilities, and thought himself capable of defeating Ling Han? Now, Luo Ba had made his move, and it was up to Ling Han whether to accept or otherwise. Ling Han's response was very decisive. As long as he paid, he would fight. The fee for his appearance was 10 true origin stones. If he won, there would be an additional payment of 100 true origin stones. The battle would only commence after an agreement was signed. True enough, this guy had not changed in the slightest. When they heard how Ling Han responded, everyone felt amused. He had obviously made an enemy of a powerful person like Zhao Luan, yet was still unaffected. What was this guy's brain made of? He was really too thick, wasn't he? This time, Luo Ba also replied very quickly, and agreed to Ling Han's conditions. Both sides agreed to battle 3 days later. Ling Han was sure that Luo Ba definitely had a great improvement in his abilities, and that was why he wanted to battle him to the death. Otherwise, it was utterly impossible that he would be giving up true origin stones and his life in the process. How could a good person like that exist in this world? But he was unafraid. Aside from himself, no one knew what extent his present battle prowess had reached. Strength, of 17 stars, and battle prowess was 25 stars. In the Shattering Void tier, the difference of a single star meant a world of difference, and from 20 stars onwards, it became incredibly difficult to improve battle prowess, which also meant that the gap in battle prowess was also incomparably huge with every increase of a single star. Could Luo Ba manage to not only surge up to 20 stars of battle prowess in a short few days, but also surpass 5 stars? Who would believe that? Nothing changed in Ling Han's daily life. He was filled with curiosity about that white-haired elder of the library previously, so he also asked around, but no one could clearly describe the origins of that old man Su. They only knew that he had already been in the library since a very long time ago. Every time they saw him, he looked like he was going to die soon, but he did not, which was incredibly bizarre. He came to the library, and saw that old man Su was just like he was last time, snoozing at the same place. He greeted, "Greetings, senior." Old man Su raised his head and cast an eye on him. Suddenly, his gaze became heated and bright, but quickly dimmed. He gave a cough, and asked, "Young man, have you finished cultivating the 6 techniques return to 1? Ling Han was shocked, and blurted out, "How does Senior know about that?" "Ho ho, if that was not the case, how could your strength increase so much in a short 1 month's time?" Old Man Su countered with a question of his own. The old man could roughly detect his strength? Ling Han nodded, and answered, "Senior indeed has good eyes, which impresses this junior." Old Man Su laughed, and said, "However, Junior, your situation is not too encouraging." Ling Han smiled as well, and answered, "It's fine. I should still be able to hold on." Old Man Su stared at Ling Han. After a good while, he finally said, "This old man has a lackluster technique. Are you interested in learning it?" This old man was definitely an ultimate elite. He said that it was lackluster, but those were definitely humble words. Ling Han replied quickly, "Please offer your guidance, Senior." Old Man Su closed his eyes, seeming to be napping. Just when Ling Han thought that he was really going to fall asleep, he suddenly opened his mouth, and said, "This secret technique is called 7-Kill Subduing Soul Technique. It lets you use your spiritual strength to attack your opponent, which can temporarily stun them. The stronger your spirit is, the tougher and more durable it is, and thus the greater the effect you would be able to induce in your opponent." Immediately, Ling Han was incredibly and pleasantly surprised. His spirit was very strong, but he did not have any technique that could let the strength of his spirit cause actual effect. Under the effects of the reincarnation tea, his spirit was far stronger than that of any other cultivator in the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. He had cultivated the 2nd layer of the Indestructible Heaven Scroll as well, so his spirit was getting tougher and more durable by the day. If he learnt the 7-Kill Subduing Soul technique, then in a situation when his opponent was unable to defend in time, even Mountain River tier cultivators could possibly be struck, and become stunned due to its effects. But what was the greatest effect of that? Being stunned for an instant. No matter how short that time was, the victim would definitely lose consciousness, and he could use that opening to draw the person into the Black Tower. Once in the Black Tower, he was the absolute dictator. So how could Ling Han not be pleasantly surprised? "However, Senior, I have no intention of taking a master," Ling Han said. Old Man Su smiled, and said, "It is only an unimportant technique. Just take it that this old man is fond of you, and thus taught you the technique." "Thank you, Senior," Ling Han declared solemnly. After a pause, he continued, "In future, if there is any need for this junior, I will definitely not refuse." Old Man Su laughed, nodded, and said, "Perhaps there would really be a day when you can help this old man." Ling Han knew that there was no hatred that existed for no reason, nor was there love that existed for no reason. Ling Han did not quite believe that the old man wanted to teach him this 7-Kill Subduing Soul technique just because he cherished his talent. After all, they had only met twice. But this secret technique sounded like it suited him very much, so he could not force himself to speak words of refusal. "Come over here." Old Man Su nodded at Ling Han. Ling Han walked over. Meanwhile, Old Man Su stretched out a finger. There was a flickering white light at his fingertip, which he then pressed down in the direction of Ling Han's forehead. This was a vital point. If Old Man Su held killing intent, then with a light press, Ling Han would not even have the chance to duck into the Black Tower, as his spirit would be directly shattered. Ling Han chose to trust him, and thus he stood as firm as a mountain. Old Man Su's finger pressed down. Wang, innumerable characters instantly surged into Ling Han's mind. Each character was endlessly complex, and could not be expressed or explained with words. It was like they were a part of the Tao of heaven and earth, a kind of regulation, and could only be understood, but not described. Ling Han sat on the ground, and could not help probing and investigating. Every slight improvement caused him uncontrollable joy. But just as he was concentrating, he felt a clap on his shoulder, which broke his concentration. He snapped open his eyes, and saw Old Man Su, who smiled at him, and said, "You have already meditated for 3 days. You should have an appointment today, right? Ling Han was stunned. 3 days had passed just like that? Why did he feel as if only a mere instant had passed? He nodded, and said, "Thank you, Senior. I shall pay you a visit another day. Go on." Old Man Su waved him off. Chapter 924, Luo Ba became stronger. As Ling Han walked towards Thousand Spear Mountain, he was still reflecting on the 7-kill subduing soul technique. With every moment that passed, he felt as if his understanding had deepened, and he could not help but be overjoyed, wanting nothing more than to immediately turn around and go back so that he could study this secret technique properly. 7 kills in subduing soul were actually 2 sections of the secret technique. Minor accomplishment was to subdue the soul, wherein he could use divine sense to attack his opponent and bring the latter a momentary lapse in his senses. This, in the midst of battle, was practically fatal. For example, in a situation when both sides were equal in power, or even in the case when his abilities were slightly inferior, an attack from his 7-kill subduing soul technique, causing the opponent a momentary blankness, followed by another strike with the sword, could decide the victory then and there. However, in the case where the power gap was too big, perhaps he would not even manage to use his sword, and his opponent would have already come back to his senses. There was nothing that could be done. This was only a martial arts technique, and not a nature-defying mystical power that could let one completely ignore the difference of cultivation levels. However, after major accomplishment, he would be able to directly kill and destroy the spirit. The 7 kills were divided into 7 levels in total, and each level was more powerful than the last. Still, it also had very high demands on the strength of his own spirit. If one could not temper his own spirit to become incomparably firm and solid, then how could it become a blade to kill others? After cultivating the heart of martial arts, one would possess the ability to directly injure his opponent's spirit. However, this was most effective against evil objects, such as the corpse soldiers against normal living beings. The heart of martial arts did not have very outstanding effects when causing injury, and was more about control over one's own abilities. This secret technique might have evolved from the heart of martial arts, and had further developed the uses of the spirit. As Ling Han walked, he continued to ponder. Soon, he arrived at the foot of the 1,000-spear mountain. This was one of the 3 mountains in the academy. Halfway up the mountain, there was a large platform. It was the venue where spars would take place. The floor tiles had all been reinforced, and even cultivators who had perfected the mountain river tier would find it very difficult to damage. If not, there would have been a need to repair it after every single battle. Wouldn't that be too troublesome? Ling Han is here. Seeing Ling Han walk over from the foot of the mountain, everyone began to call out in excitement. A duel to death was a very rare occurrence in the history of the academy, and the students here were all very young. Possibly because they had always buried themselves in cultivation, they might not even have had a single experience of actual battle. Thus, they were indescribably looking forward to bloodshed and death. The path of martial arts had always been accompanied by fresh blood and slaughter. One could not possibly stay in a protected zone forever. The spectators were all looking at Ling Han. This guy was definitely a legendary figure. Although he had only enrolled in the academy 1 month ago, just how much news was there about him? An emperor that had opened the skies. He slapped Luo Ba, and extorted the Luo clan. He snatched the goddess of the academy, Shui Yenyu, attracting the jealousy and hatred of the masses, and had even drawn out Zhao Luan, who issued a notice of death to him. What new student could accomplish so many majestic feats? He's an emperor that had opened the skies, so his battle prowess must have definitely reached 20 stars. On a huge tree stood a young man in yellow robes, his arms crossed behind his back, and an expression of powerful pride on his face. Big brother Yi, what is there for you to be afraid of? You are the greatest elite in the Shattering Void tier of our Eastern institution. You have already achieved battle prowess of 20 stars 10 years ago, right? By his side, there stood another young man. This young man was dressed in green from head to toe, and was even wearing a green cap on his head. 2 small goatees were left on both sides of his mouth, making him look a bit comical. The young man in yellow robes showed an aloof and proud expression as he said, Junren, you are always unwilling to focus on cultivation. If that had not been the case, your present battle prowess would have already reached 20 stars. How would you still be staying at 19 stars, unable to advance further? Hee, you know me. I enjoy reveling among the flowers, the green-robed man said, grinning. The yellow-robed man was called Yi Chengyuan, and he was the greatest elite in Shattering Void tier of the Eastern Institution, whereas the green-clothed man was called Mo Junren, and was a good friend of Yi Chengyuan. The elders of their clans were also on good terms. As a result, they had been playmates since youth, and were practically inseparable. Big brother Yi, you keep delaying your advance into the Mountain River tier. You must be thinking of cultivating Shattering Void tier to perfection within 100 years. Exactly how many stars has your battle prowess reached by now? 21 stars? Mo Junren guessed. Yi Chengyuan laughed loudly, and said, if that Ling Han is very strong, you will have the chance to see me make a move. Big brother Yi, you actually want to challenge that man who has come from a small world? Mo Junren was extremely surprised. How many years have I not moved? I fear I will be forgotten, Yi Chengyuan's eyes looked behind Ling Han Luoba was here. Unconsciously, his gaze turned serious as he said, this Luo Ba is not so simple. Looks like his abilities have greatly improved, and he has broken through the maximum limit of 20 stars. What? Mo Junren was astonished. In the eyes of the majority, battle prowess of 20 stars was the maximum limit of the Shattering Void tier. He could accept Yi Chengyuan breaking through 20 stars because he was very familiar with his friend, but now, here was another with battle prowess above 20 stars, so he was naturally astonished without compare. He should have refined some kind of treasure. He himself should not have battle prowess of 20 stars. There seems to be some god tool that has given him an additional boost, and pushed his battle prowess up to 20 stars, Yi Chengyuan guessed. His eyes were really sharp. Luo Ba's situation was indeed as he had said. The blood tier stone did not increase Luo Ba's personal ability, but would give an additional boost whenever he delivered an attack. However, the final effect would still be the same. My hands are itching. Yi Chengyuan laughed loudly. He leaped out, and shoo, he had appeared in front of Luo Ba within a few jumps. Shooting out a punch, he shouted, Luo Ba, come, let us exchange a few blows. In the academy, as long as cultivation levels were equal, spars could be initiated at any time as long as it did not lead to any permanent injury or death. Who would have imagined that Yi Chengyuan would actually make his move at this moment? Luo Ba could not help but grunt. He could not wait to defeat Ling Han, and thrash him so much till he was only left with a single breath. He would be humiliated in the eyes of everyone, and only then would he choose to end his life. With a disturbance from Yi Chengyuan like this now, he was naturally not in a very good mood. You're asking to be thrashed, he declared coldly, and delivered a palm strike towards Yi Chengyuan. Who? The movement of his palm produced a whistle in the air. The moment he shot out his palm, the image of a powerful creature actually appeared. It looked like a bird, and was as red as flames. It had 6 legs and 4 wings, but had no eyes, nose, or mouth, because a pair of wings was growing out of its head. This was undoubtedly very bizarre, but this monster bird did not make anyone feel the slightest bit like laughing, and only possessed endless divine might. Imperial River, someone declared in a shaking voice. This was the divine beast, Imperial River. In the immortal realm, those that could claim to be divine beasts were definitely not those that had advanced into the Mountain River tier, but those that had reached the formidable height of the Genesis tier. With one attack, the figure of a divine beast actually appeared. What kind of concept was that? Yet Yi Chengyuan was not scared. Instead, he was overjoyed, and laughed loudly as he proclaimed, "You have refined the blood tier stone? That's why your attacks would induce the appearance of an image of the owner of the divine blood. However, this is ultimately just an image. If you want to suppress me, it is still not enough." He gave a loud shout, and brilliant golden light enshrouded his whole body. His figure actually became taller all of a sudden by an additional 3 feet, frighteningly majestic. Hong, waving both fists, he punched out in Luo Ba's direction. Chapter 929, You Are Going to Be a Grandfather. A 5th-tier clan couldn't be underestimated. Being included in the 9 tiers of clans in the imperial capital meant that they were influential, possessing an esteemed status in society that would make other people look up to them. The ancestor of the Shui clan was an elite whose cultivation had reached the middle levels of the Sun-Moon tier. He was said to have reached the late stage of the middle levels, and was expected to go towards the peak. However, it ought to be impossible for him to reach the higher levels. After all, time and tide waited for no Manha didn't have that long to live. The present patriarch of the Shui clan was a 6th-ranked official of the majestic empire, and also the biological father of Shui Yinyu. His cultivation had also reached the minor levels of the Sun-Moon tier. In the future, it would be likely that he would take over the responsibility of guarding the Shui clan from their ancestor. 8 guards had lined up at the main doors, all of whom were at the level of the Shattering Void tier. Within the entire imperial capital, probably aside from the Empress, other forces wouldn't be qualified to have cultivators of the Mountain River tier serve as guards, as it would be a huge waste of financial resources. Secondly, it would also be too conspicuous. How would the Empress view such a person? With Shui Yinyu leading the way, they naturally entered the Shui clan's manor with ease. They walked towards the study where the patriarch of the Shui clan would be found. You mustn't let the cat out of the bag, Shui Yinyu whispered to him before entering. Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, Rest assured. I will be by your side to help. Shui Yinyu stressed again. That would really be a huge help for me, Ling Han replied with a smile. Shui Yinyu took a deep breath. Then, she pushed open the door and walked in first. Father, she called out softly. Inside the study, there was only a middle-aged man sitting upright and reading a book. Hearing her, he looked up, and swept his gaze over both Shui Yinyu and Ling Han. He then nodded. You may leave first, he said to Shui Yinyu. Shui Yinyu was stunned for a moment. She was about to open her mouth to speak when the man glared at her. At that moment, she could only take her leave obediently. Ling Han caught her eyes momentarily, with an expression that meant, You just said a while ago that you would stay by my side and support me. How could you abandon me in the blink of an eye? Shui Yinyu glanced at him. He could still make cutting remarks at a time like this. Just what was his heart made of? It was really too tough. She walked out of the entrance and closed the door behind her. The patriarch of the Shui clan was called Zhao did not speak or even bother to look at Ling Han. Instead, he picked up his book and continued reading. At this moment, Ling Han was observing the other party. This middle-aged man was really too handsome for words. At the very least, Ling Han knew that he was no match for the man in terms of appearance. Moreover, for a full-grown man to be born with a pair of peach blossom eyes, it would really cause others, whether male or female, be attracted to him. It seemed that Shui Yinyu had taken more after her father, as she not only inherited her father's exceptional beauty, but also the temperament. However, when these characteristics appeared on a man, it would make him appear effeminate. Yet, if they were found in a woman, her exquisiteness and allure would be bone deep. Shui Zhao had no intention to speak at all, but the aura of an elite of the Sun-Moon tier had been set in motion. In such a situation, even an elite of the Mountain River tier would be trembling all over, and not even have the strength to stand, let alone a cultivator of the Shattering Void tier. The suppression of every level in the immortal realm was really tremendous, especially at the stage of the major cultivation tiers. It was said that even the legendary 5-star geniuses could not cross such a domain. In the eyes of others, Luo Ba was powerful to the extent that he could not be opposed. However, in his eyes, so what if his battle prowess was 21 stars? A careless slap and he would be smacked to death, so was there any need to take particular note of him? His thoughts having been interrupted, he was naturally not going to be in a good mood, and the expression on his face immediately revealed that. Others did not know that, and thought that Ling Han was afraid. They all shook their heads covertly, thinking that this battle was probably not going to happen. Ling Han stretched out a hand, and asked, "What about the payment for my participation?" Pooh. Abruptly, a great many choked. "You are really greedy for money, aren't you? Didn't you see how awesome Luo Ba was just now?" Yet Luo Ba laughed loudly, and carelessly tossed out 10 true origin stones, saying coldly, "This is for you to arrange your funeral." Sigh. After extorting 2,000 true origin stones from the Luo clan, this mere sum of 10 true origin stones seemed to have lost its attractiveness all of a sudden. Still, it was better than nothing. If he did not take it, it would be a waste anyways. No one would grumble about having too much money anyway, no matter how much they already had. Ling Han put away the true origin stones, and asked, "There's another 100? You think you can defeat me?" Luo Ba was instantly infuriated. Ling Han snickered, and said, "Rules are rules. Where do you come up with all this nonsense? Are you going to fight or not? If not, I'm going home to sleep." "Yes." Luo Ba gritted his teeth, and took out 100 true origin stones with another wave of his hand. This time, Ling Han did not put them away. After all, the battle was not won yet. However, it was only a matter of time. "Can we fight now?" Luo Ba asked sinisterly, the killing intent in his heart boiling. "Just take this chance to win the verbal battle now, but later, you're finished." In the academy, there were also a few higher-ups that had come to observe the battle, though they stood quite far away. One of them was Luo Kaifenga Jr. of his own clan was involved in a duel to death, so he naturally had to pay attention. There was also Zhang Deman. He was quite fond of Ling Han, and was of a mind to take him as his disciple. In addition, Wei Qianshu was also present. Since the last time he had been dragged along by Luo Kaifeng, he had also become interested in Ling Han. Duels to death were very uncommon nowadays, what more when both sides possessed extremely high battle prowess. There were many spectators, and the students in the Shattering Void Tier division of the Northern Institution numbered the most. There were also some from the other 3 institutions, but altogether, they were fewer than the students from the Northern Institution. "Let's fight, then. Where do you come up with so much nonsense? Are you afraid of death?" Ling Han asked, smiling. Luo Ba was enraged half to death. "It was obviously you that had been spouting too much nonsense, all right?" However, the battle finally began now. He would slowly torture Ling Han, and make the other suffer in his agony for daring to actually slap him. "Xiao," he pounced out, and shot out a palm strike. The image of the divine beast, Imperial River, appeared once more, bringing along a great power of dominance with it. Ling Han placed his left arm behind his back, and was standing in a very casual pose. He waited until Luo Ba had come close enough. Then, he waved out a palm and pressed down on Luo Ba. Multiple divine patterns interwove together, forming an incredibly complex pattern. Earth overturning seal. Pung. With a palm strike, Luo Ba was undoubtedly sent flying. Then, his body split apart in midair, separating into pieces and producing a shower of blood. His corpse landed on the ground, his expression one of disbelief. It seemed like he was wondering why he was smacked to death with a single slap when he obviously had battle prowess of 21 stars. This was illogical, and unacceptable. All around was dead silence, and the only thing that could be heard was the whistling wind. Who would have thought that the previously awe-inspiring Luo Ba would actually be smacked to death with a single palm strike? Was this really a fuck elite who had battle prowess of 21 stars of Shattering Void Tier, and not a fly? No. Luo Ba was definitely not a fly. On the contrary, he was incredibly powerful, and exchanged 3 blows with Yi Chengyuan with neither coming out on top. This was enough to prove that he was powerful. Everyone felt their scalps go numb. It was because Ling Han was even more powerful. What kind of battle prowess was this? 22 stars? Actually, the majority did not have much of an idea how much strength could be attained with every improvement of a single star of battle prowess from 20 stars onwards. That was because it only existed in theory and legends, so how could it be measured in detail? Yi Qingyuan felt a muscle twitch in his cheek, and his whole body was covered with cold sweat. Ling Han's power caused him to lose even the courage to issue a challenge. Chapter 926, False Charges. I knew it. In the distance, Li Weiwei waved her fist excitedly. She had guessed that Ling Han's battle prowess might have reached 23 stars of Shattering Void tier. Thus, with the advantage of an additional 2 stars, he could easily suppress his opponent. Ji Yun'er was also shocked. She had thought that the battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier was already invincible in this realm, and 21 stars was practically a myth. But not only had 2 such people appeared today, one of them was even killed on the spot by a single strike. Could it be that Ling Han was actually at the level of the Mountain River tier? Bar. Luo Kaifeng rushed out like a gust of wind, his expression twisted, looking like he was going to devour someone. Luo Ba was the strongest genius of the Luo clan in 100 years, so the clan had spent enormous effort in obtaining a blood tier stone for him to refine. This would be beneficial even for cultivators of the Sun Moon tier and Mountain River tier. But now, Luo Ba was killed by a single swat like a fly. How could he accept this? His eyes were bloodshot as he shouted, "How dare you, you dare to commit murder within the academy? I will kill you." He reached out blatantly, one palm open, and made a clapping motion towards Ling Han. When a cultivator of the Sun Moon tier attacked, even if he was only at the minor levels, how terrifying would his power be? If Ling Han were to take the hit, he would definitely be crushed to death. How could his body of level 1 godly metal withstand the almighty attack from a cultivator of the Sun Moon tier? Really too shameless. Li Weiwei was stomping her feet in the distance, yet she was powerless, standing too far away to block the attack. Ji Yun'er also furrowed her long, shapely eyebrows, but consoled Li Weiwei, "Rest assured, the elites of the academy won't let him mess around." True enough, when Luo Kaifeng made his move, both Zhang Deman and Wei Qianshu also moved at the same time and intercepted him, saying, "Brother Luo, please control yourself." The two of them had joined forces, and naturally blocked Luo Kaifeng's attempted attack with ease. Ling Han appeared calm, he did not feel even the slightest bit of nervousness. This was the academy. If Luo Kaifeng was allowed to commit murder here, that would really be a joke. There had to be other elites at the higher levels of the Sun Moon tier, or even at the level of perfection thereof, who were quietly monitoring the academy and could make their move at any time. It was just that there was no need for them to show themselves earlier. Ling Han put away the pile of true origin stones on the ground. This was his stake earned from the bet. It was a pity that Luo Ba's body couldn't be taken away by him. There ought to be a lot of good stuff inside his spatial spirit tool. This brat killed a member of my Luo clan. Am I supposed to just let him go? Luo Kaifeng sneered. He was well aware that he couldn't kill Ling Han on the spot, but deliberately put up a front of uncontrollable anger in order to prepare for the excuse which he would later give. Old foxes like him might be impulsive, but would also promptly settle down. The instant that he'd rushed out, he had already thought of an idea. Zhang Deman humphed, and said, this was a duel to death. Both sides had agreed to it. If one party had died in battle, then that person could only blame himself for being inferior in strength. That's not what happened here. Luo Kaifeng shook his head, and said solemnly, before, I had clearly heard that Luo Ba said, please stop, and I concede defeat, but the evil brat neither cared nor acknowledged it, and insisted on striking out. This doesn't conform to the rules of a duel to death. Fuck. When the others heard the words of Luo Kaifeng, all of them cursed inwardly. They had all seen plenty of shameless people, but never one so shameless. Was this person truly an elite of the Sun Moon tier? How could he be so shameless? Luo Ba was killed on the spot by Ling Han with a single blow, so how would there be any time for him to admit defeat? In fact, Luo Kaifeng couldn't care less. For people like he who had achieved such a high status, would he bother with the views of others? If he was unhappy, he could directly suppress and kill anyone. How come I didn't hear anything? Zhang de Man queried, feeling displeased. Then one could only say that the cultivation of Brother Zhang is still lacking slightly, Luo Kaifeng said laughingly. He looked over at Wei Qianshu with a cool gaze. Brother Wei must have heard it, right? Wei Qianshu felt shocked. The other party's sentence was full of threats. If he said no, then it would be directly going against the Luo clan. He himself was fearless, even though he did not have any powerful backing. He had reached the height of his current cultivation based on his own strength. However, it did not mean that he had no descendants. It wasn't as if he did not know about Luo clan's conduct. They would do anything. Which was more important, conscience or family? Was a cultivator from a small world more important than his own family? Wei Qianshu sighed inwardly, saying, I seem to have heard Luo Ba said, concede defeat. He used the two words, I seemed, so as to leave some leeway for himself. Zhang de Man was seething with anger. This was really too shameless. But, like Wei Qianshu, he was also a lone cultivator without any powerful backing to support him. In his heart, he was aware that if the Luo clan wished to manipulate the outcome at any cost, they could practically twist the facts to their favor. Luo Kaifeng, you've done so many shameful deeds. Have you no fear of ghosts knocking upon your door in the middle of the night, or being unable to sleep in peace? He said in a low voice. I am a cultivator, what is there to fear? Luo Kaifeng said softly, then turned to look at Wei Qianshu. Brother Wei, this brat has violated the rules of the academy. I suppose he ought to be expelled? When everyone heard this, they all thought that Luo Kaifeng was ruthless indeed. Without the protection of Scarlet Heaven Academy, what was Ling Han? Any person at the level of the Mountain River tier could kill him at any time. Ling Han remained calm and collected. Could the Luo clan really hide the truth from the masses within Scarlet Heaven Academy? Wei Qianshu was put in an extremely difficult position. This Luo Kaifeng not only just dragged him into a messy affair, but also intended to make him an accomplice in his sinister plan all the way. But, he had already been untrue to his own convictions earlier, so now there was already no way out for him. Otherwise, he would get in trouble at both sides of the fence. He clenched his teeth, and was just about to open his mouth when he saw a white shadow flash past him. On the shoulder of Ling Han, there sat a big white cat. There was nothing strange about cats. Within the imperial capital, there was quite a number of people rearing demon tigers, such as the precious flame blue pattern tiger and the ice genesis tiger, while some could even reach the level of the mountain river tier. In contrast, the cat in front was just at the level of the shattering void tier. The problem was that everyone in the academy knew that there was one cat that couldn't be provoked. Luo Kaifeng was also stumped for words. Of course, he knew that Lord Academy Head had a cat he spoilt to no end. Whoever dared to touch this cat would be destroyed by him. But, this cat actually crouched upon Ling Han's shoulder. What was the meaning of this? Just a coincidence? Or, could it be? He couldn't help but shudder. If Ling Han had the backing of an elite of the heavenly body tier, then even if the entire Luo clan were to band together, they would be absolutely no match for the other party, and could be killed with a single finger. Meow. The white cat swept his gaze across the crowd in annoyance. Don't you all know that I am already hungry, yet you all still refuse to let Ling Han go home to prepare a meal for me? At this moment, Ling Han gave a faint smile, and said, I am about to be driven out of the academy, right? Then, big white cat, you will come along with me henceforth, and have all the meat that you can eat. Meow. The big white cat nodded arrogantly. A demon beast of the shattering void tier would certainly be intelligent, thus, it was not at all strange for it to have such a human-like reaction. However, both Luo Kaifeng and Wei Qianshu were scared out of their wits. If they were to allow Ling Han to abduct the big white cat, who would bear the consequences in the event Lord Academy Head was to discover this and flip out? Lord Cat, come over here. I have plenty of delicious food too, Luo Kaifeng said hastily. Since Ling Han could use food to tempt this demon cat, then why couldn't he use the same trick? The big white cat became agitated with anger. Did he really think that I'm just a gluttonous cat? That I would side with anyone that gave me food? If it weren't for this human called Ling Han, who had a humble enough and sincere attitude, given this Lord Cat's arrogance no pride, would I have agreed to befriend him? Just who do you think you are? Chapter 927, Deal. Meow. The big white cat purred before charging out at Luo Kaifeng. Its speed was very swift, and there was practically none in the shattering void tier who could compare to it. But, who was the opponent here? A sun-moon tier cultivator. In that case, naturally it would not pose any threat to Luo Kaifeng, but the problem was Luo Kaifeng dared not strike back, and merely kept dodging its attacks. An elite of the sun-moon tier was actually being chased around in circles by a shattering void tier individual. Probably only this demon cat was capable of achieving such a feat. After chasing for a while, the big white cat jumped back onto Ling Han's shoulder, and arrogantly combed through its whiskers while unsheathing its claws. Its expression was implying, which one of you dares to bully my people? I will not let you off lightly. Zhang Deman could not hold back the hearty laughter that escaped him. Who would have thought that Ling Han would become friends with this big white cat that none could afford to offend? He coughed, choking back his laugh as he said, I still stand by my views. Luo Ba did not verbally admit defeat, therefore Ling Han is not at fault. If there are no further opinions from the two of you, then just let Ling Han go back. What more could Luo Kaifeng say? That beast was Academy Head's favorite pet, and his affection towards it had even surpassed his affection for his own descendants. Even if it were the elders of the Luo clan here today, they would also have to yield. He gave a resentful humph, picked up the pieces Luo Ba's body, and stored it into the spatial spirit tool. His figure leaped, leaving immediately. Wei Qianshu sighed again. Just now, he'd been put in a difficult situation. He shook his head, and also leaped and left. Many thanks to Senior for speaking up justly. Ling Han spoke in all sincerity, clasping his hands in the direction of Zhang Deman. Zhang Deman guffawed heartily, and said, even if I did not intervene, with this cat around, nobody would dare to even touch you in the entire academy. The big white cat raised its head proudly. I am that formidable. I still have to thank you, Senior, Ling Han insisted. Zhang Deman nodded his head. This young man had a sense of propriety, observed etiquette, and had a pretty good disposition. Talent in martial arts was one thing, but one's disposition was also similarly vital, otherwise, one would only become a danger to others in the future. Go on, he smilingly said. A student dying meant that there were bound to be some loose ends to be tied, but that had nothing to do with Ling Han. Ling Han nodded, and clasped his hands once more as he said, this student shall then beg my leave. Bringing the big white cat with him, he left. This guy, it was already on more than one occasion it was scratching his head. Don't you know that I am hungry? After Ling Han left, the spectators that had gathered to watch the fight naturally dispersed. There was big news now. Ling Han's battle prowess had already surpassed 21 stars of shattering void tier. Big brother Yi. Mo Junren gave Yi Chengyuan a light pat. Yi Chengyuan was in a daze, his body drenched in a cold sweat as he suddenly turned around and uttered, I kept on thinking. Supposed I were in Luo Ba's shoes, how would I counter that strike? The conclusion was, it would be an imminent death no matter what. Mo Junren couldn't help laughing as he responded, Brother Yi, you could also choose not to spar with that maniac. Yi Chengyuan's eyes immediately brightened as he said, right, I have already cultivated to the ultimate of the shattering void tier. With my talent, if I do not possess some kind of exceptional fated opportunity, I would not be able to advance a step further and break through to the battle prowess of 22 stars. But, if I break through to the mountain river tier, then I will again have room to elevate myself further. Yes, that is why we only spend 100 years to reach battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier. Although this maximum limit is very important, it is definitely not the most important, Mo Junren continued. One has to first become an immortal too. Only then would one be considered really powerful. Yi Qingyun breathed out a long sigh in relief as his self-confidence completely returned. He said, Junren, you are way smarter than you let on. Am I? Mo Junren let out a laugh. I am but a romantic person who enjoys playing with the flowers. At a certain place. Despicable old witch, let Nyo out. Yowling sounds resembling beast cries rang out, followed by drum-like raps on the doors of the room. Nyo wants to see Ling Han, you ugly old woman, quickly let Nyo out. Hu Nyo's entire body was leaning on the door, her small hand clutching onto the lintel of the door. She looked just like a monkey. Nonsense. The old lady garbed in black robes grabbed at empty air, and Hu Nyo was immediately drawn over without even the slightest resistance. Nyo is very angry, Nyo wants to become bad, Nyo no longer wants to cultivate. Hu Nyo puffed out her cheeks and put both hands on her waist. You little girl, which day have you been serious in cultivating ever since returning to the Rock Palace? The black-robed old lady sighed. Yin only infused the soul essence of martial arts into your body. How much you can refine and digest still depends largely on your own efforts. Nyo doesn't want to cultivate. Nyo wants to see Ling Han. Hu Nyo was not about to listen to reason, and became even more oblivious to fear as she glared right back at the old lady. The black-robed old lady got a big headache. Only the Imperial Empress could cultivate the 3 supreme secret techniques of the mythological beast's palace. Because only their milady could inherit the unique soul essence of martial arts, even with the mystical arts in front of you, you would achieve nothing if you weren't her and didn't possess the foundation. Why did they encounter such an unreliable successor? She had been with Hu Nyo for more than a year, and also came to have a considerable understanding of this lass, knowing that being fierce did not work on Hu Nyo, for she did not even know what fear was. All right. I promise you, as long as you could cultivate to the Genesis tier, I will allow you to go and see that guy. But only for 3 days at most, after which you must return. Our Rock Palace has a great enemy, and only if you have cultivated the 3 great secret techniques would you be able to oppose them. Not letting you out is also for the sake of your own safety. The old lady offered a compromise. Hu Nyo counted on her fingers, and said, fine, then Nyo is going to use 3 years to cultivate to the Genesis tier. She leaned her head sideways and looked at the old lady as she said, rotten old lady, quickly go away. Your presence here only fuels my anger, and it's making me lose the mood to cultivate. The black-robed old lady could not refrain from shaking her head. She was also someone on the level of the overlord of her territory, yet facing Hu Nyo, she just could not muster up even the slightest bit of a temper, which showed that everyone had their weakness. Go on, don't hinder Nyo's cultivation. Hu Nyo waved her hand, her face filled with impatience. The black-robed old lady helplessly left, but at least now Hu Nyo was finally willing to cultivate properly, letting her breathe a sigh of relief. This little ancestor was really a big headache. Nevertheless, unexpectedly a genius had emerged in that small world. It was not apparent what was so particularly special about that human, but the fact remained that his son really was a prodigy of martial arts. Were it not for the fact that Rock Palace did not take in male disciples, she really would not have wanted to let the chance slip by. The Heavenly Saint Palace is currently taking in new disciples, and they have always been on quite good terms with our Rock Palace. Offering them a prodigy as successor would definitely make them utterly grateful. Just nice, we'll be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. She swiftly decided. The Luo clan residence. Luo Hongdao stared fixedly at Luo Ba's body, both his hands clenched tightly as the flames of fury flared in his eyes. The most outstanding successor among the Luo family's younger generation was killed just like that. Although grooming a shattering void tier cultivator did not really require that big a sacrifice, the blood tier stone was truly precious, and even the thought of it caused him heartache. We absolutely cannot let that lowlife off the hook, he uttered harshly. But, Lord Patriarch, that fellow seemed to have some kind of relationship with Fu Hui. Luo Kaifeng said. Shivers ran through his body at the mention of Fu Hui's name, just as if the name of an elite of the heavenly body tier possessed some kind of magical power. Chapter 928, Father-in-law wants to see me. Humph, he's merely on very affectionate terms with a cat, Luo Hongdao spat disdainfully. Yes. Luo Kaifeng promptly nodded in agreement. Still, it is hard to make a move in the academy. Luo Hongdao scrunched his eyebrows in a frown, though the frown disappeared just as quickly. Then, he said, we do not have to worry about that. Lord Patriarch means. Luo Kaifeng asked in bafflement. Go to Dark Night Hall and put up an announcement, offering a reward of 10,000 true origin stones for that scum's life. Luo Hongdao commanded coldly. Dark Night Hall was an organization of assassins. As long as one was willing to pay, they would dare to kill anyone. This organization was very big, with branches in the 3 majestic empires and dozens of royal empires, but no one knew the whereabouts of its headquarters, who the leader was, and what kind of power he possessed. In short, even the 3 majestic empires wanted to wipe out this organization, but have never succeeded. 10,000 true origin stones for the head of a shattering void tier cultivator. This was too high a value for that lowlife. Luo Kaifeng sneered. But, in this way, Ling Han would unequivocally become a dead man. Could an organization as formidable as the Dark Night Hall fail to kill a mere shattering void tier cultivator? Even if they dared not enter the Scarlet Heaven Academy, it was impossible that Ling Han would remain inside his entire life. As for when Ling Han came out, it was not necessary for them to keep watch. Hereafter, it would be the Dark Night Hall's business. Yes. Luo Kaifeng nodded. After Ling Han and the big fat cat returned to the courtyard, he roasted some meat to fill his and the cat's stomach, then continued with his secluded cultivation and immersed himself in the 7-kill subduing soul technique. After another 5 days, he was finally able to attain a little success, and could wield it preliminarily. He stood in the middle of the courtyard, and stared intently at a stone. Suddenly, his eyes shone, and a sword light shot out from between his brows. Bang! It struck the stone, and it was smashed into smithereens. This secret technique is not only as simple as an assault on the spirit. Rather, it also has quite a terrifying destructive effect on material existence. However, specifically what extent it can reach still depends on what level one could cultivate the secret technique to, and the strength of one's own spirit, Ling Han appraised. The impact of this assault on the spirit could be real and spiritual. In reality, it could deal damage to one's physique, while spiritually, it could attack one's spirit. Its uses were infinite. Ling Han could not contain his joy. With the additional support of the indestructible Heaven Scroll, his spirit was incomparably tough, which could maximize the power of this secret technique. He reckoned it did not even occur to Old Man Su that this secret technique would help him so much after he had cultivated the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Peng, 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 a knocking came from the door, and he went over to open it. Standing prettily at the door was the delicate Shui Yenyu, her seductively luscious and mature figure giving off a profoundly stirring temptation, a real test of one's control. Furthermore, with Ling Han's ample imagination, it did not take much for him to clearly know how tempting the tender body that lay hidden beneath the seemingly loose and long dress was. Sensing the heat from Ling Han's ardent gaze, Shui Yenyu's lovely face was tinted with a becoming blush. She then immediately relayed, "My father wants to see you." "Father-in-law wants to see me?" Ling Han mumbled. This was not that strange. He and Shui Yenyu did already make a pledge to be married, so it would be weird if there was no response from the bride's family. Now that he was being summoned after such a long delay, it was considered a bit too late already. Probably, the Shui clan also thought this was merely a rumor, but when Shui Yenyu was called and questioned, they then knew it was not that simple. Shui Yenyu's face then turned cold as she said, "Don't even think you can take advantage of me. I say, although we are false lovers, we should also look the part, right?" Ling Han said laughingly. "Now there's nobody here, there's no need to act," Shui Yenyu refused frostily. Ling Han sighed, and added, "A few days ago, while I was in a duel to death with someone, you did not even deign to drop by to take a look at me. Are you not afraid that others will say that you did not show enough concern? Wouldn't the act be seen through sooner, then? With your strength, even if there is 100 of Luo Ba, how could it be possible to harm a single strand of your hair? Shui Yanyu humphed. It was not like she had not sparred with Ling Han before, even she could hardly kill Ling Han, and instead was bitten on her. Pay. Ling Han let out a laugh, and replied, all right. Then let's go meet him. Who knows, maybe I can even get a red packet one. Oh, right, be it being fake and considered a pretense, if I do get a red packet, then it's mine. You cannot make me return it. Shui Yanyu shook her head, then countered, as far as being able to have marriage ties with the Zhao clan is concerned, my clan's thoughts on the matter have been very much inclined towards enthusiasm. So, during this meeting, be prepared, you will probably be under great pressure. Luckily, you're one of the left minister's men, so even if your level is low, my clan also would not dare to do anything to you. After all, before one beat the dog, one also has to see who the master is. Ling Han couldn't help a twitch in the corner of his mouth. He responded, what do you mean before one beat the dog one also has to see who the master is? Can't you use nicer words? Also, there's a saying that if you marry a chicken, you should follow the chicken. If I am a dog, you're not any better. Whoosh, a sword was swiftly held at Ling Han's neck as Shui Yanyu coldly declared, spout any more nonsense and I will kill you. Ling Han remained unmoved, and continued, are you going to murder your husband? Shui Yanyu glanced at Ling Han for a moment, then retrieved the sword and tucked it away. Well, she did say that after Ling Han died, she would remain his widow her whole life, so in a way, Ling Han was indeed her husband. Why did she never realize that this fellow also had such a shameless side too? Come with me. She was disinterested in putting up further with Ling Han's nonsense. She wanted to save herself further frustration of being annoyed by this guy. As the two went out, Shui Yanyu had initially intended to walk in front, however, Ling Han persistently proceeded to walk by her side. Furthermore, he was very close. Just when she was at her limit, and was about to lash out, she heard Ling Han's soft words as he moved close to her ear, and mumbled, Senior sister, don't forget, once we're out through the door, there are many eyes watching us. His warm breath caressed her face and neck, drawing an immediate rose-colored flush on her cheeks. It was an irresistibly enchanting sight to behold. No man had ever been this close to her, making her get a bout of goosebumps. Previously, Ling Han's surprise attack on her breasts had made her brain immediately cease operating. In a daze, she was not even aware that her hand was held by Ling Han, and she was being led. She only felt that she was stepping on cotton beneath her feet, a feeling light and fluffy and akin to strolling on a blanket of clouds atop the mountain peak. Which direction are we heading in? They went out through the courtyard's entrance. It was only after Ling Han posed that question that she suddenly came back to herself, and hastily flung Ling Han's hand aside. She glared furiously at Ling Han, and chided, even if it were a pretense of affection, there's no need for holding hands, right? You did it on purpose. Just now, I saw Zhao Luan's subordinates, Ling Han said, signaling in the direction behind them. N? Shui Yanyu was surprised, she had really been distracted. Let's go. Ling Han once again drew Shui Yanyu's hand into his grasp. This time, Shui Yanyu did not refuse, and let him hold her hand. However, she couldn't prevent a reflexive blush from inadvertently creeping upon her beautiful face again. So captivating was her loveliness that even ascetics would feel turmoil in their hearts. Ling Han glanced back behind them, and a smiling expression unfolded on his face. If he made up his mind to do something, then he had to do it flawlessly. Zhao Luan, you want to get a good look? In that case, I will let you see clearly and have a stimulating view. Shui Yanyu barely kept it together as she calmed down while being led by Ling Han all the way. Less than an hour later, they came in front of a manor. Shui clan, a fifth-tier clan. Chapter 929, You are going to be a grandfather. A fifth-tier clan couldn't be underestimated. Being included in the 9 tiers of clans in the imperial capital meant that they were influential, possessing an esteemed status in society that would make other people look up to them. The ancestor of the Shui clan was an elite whose cultivation had reached the middle levels of the Sun-Moon tier. He was said to have reached the late stage of the middle levels, and was expected to go towards the peak. However, it ought to be impossible for him to reach the higher levels. After all, time and tide waited for no Manha didn't have that long to live. The present patriarch of the Shui clan was a 6th-ranked official of the majestic empire, and also the biological father of Shui Yenyu. His cultivation had also reached the minor levels of the Sun-Moon tier. In the future, it would be likely that he would take over the responsibility of guarding the Shui clan from their ancestor. 8 guards had lined up at the main doors, all of whom were at the level of the Shattering Void tier. Within the entire imperial capital, probably aside from the Empress, other forces wouldn't be qualified to have cultivators of the Mountain River tier serve as guards, as it would be a huge waste of financial resources. Secondly, it would also be too conspicuous. How would the Empress view such a person? With Shui Yenyu leading the way, they naturally entered the Shui clan's manor with ease. They walked towards the study where the patriarch of the Shui clan would be found. "You mustn't let the cat out of the bag," Shui Yenyu whispered to him before entering. Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, "Rest assured. I will be by your side to help." Shui Yenyu stressed again. "That would really be a huge help for me," Ling Han replied with a smile. Shui Yenyu took a deep breath. Then, she pushed open the door and walked in first. "Father," she called out softly. Inside the study, there was only a middle-aged man sitting upright and reading a book. Hearing her, he looked up, and swept his gaze over both Shui Yenyu and Ling Han. He then nodded. "You may leave first," he said to Shui Yenyu. Shui Yenyu was stunned for a moment. She was about to open her mouth to speak when the man glared at her. At that moment, she could only take her leave obediently. Ling Han caught her eyes momentarily, with an expression that meant, "You just said a while ago that you would stay by my side and support me. How could you abandon me in the blink of an eye?" Shui Yenyu glanced at him. He could still make cutting remarks at a time like this. Just what was his heart made of? It was really too tough. She walked out of the entrance and closed the door behind her. The patriarch of the Shui clan was called Zhao did not speak or even bother to look at Ling Han. Instead, he picked up his book and continued reading. At this moment, Ling Han was observing the other party. This middle-aged man was really too handsome for words. At the very least, Ling Han knew that he was no match for the man in terms of appearance. Moreover, for a full-grown man to be born with a pair of peach blossom eyes, it would really cause others, whether male or female, be attracted to him. It seemed that Shui Yenyu had taken more after her father, as she not only inherited her father's exceptional beauty, but also the temperament. However, when these characteristics appeared on a man, it would make him appear effeminate. Yet, if they were found in a woman, her exquisiteness and allure would be bone deep. Shui Zhao had no intention to speak at all, but the aura of an elite of the Sun-Moon tier had been set in motion. In such a situation, even an elite of the Mountain River tier would be trembling all over, and not even have the strength to stand, let alone a cultivator of the Shattering Void tier. The suppression of every level in the immortal realm was really tremendous, especially at the stage of the major cultivation tiers. It was said that even the legendary 5-star geniuses could not cross such a domain. For example, a cultivator at the peak level of perfection of the Mountain River tier would not be able to directly confront another at the minor levels of the Sun-Moon tier, not even if you were a 5-star genius. The so-called how many stars genius could only cross over the minor cultivation levels. Ling Han couldn't endure it anymore. No matter how tenacious his spirit was, it wouldn't change the fact that he was still at the level of the Shattering Void tier. But what did it matter? Ling Han directly sat down. "Since you won't talk, then fine, I'll cultivate and we shall see who will surrender first." Seeing that Ling Han closed his eyes and began to calmly cultivate, Shui Zhao had an urge to smash the book in his hands into Ling Han's face. He had intended to intimidate Ling Han by displaying his strength, but it turned out that he had been bested by Ling Han. "You are Ling Han," he finally spoke up. "Is this a joke? You've asked your daughter to bring me here, so how could you not know who I am now? What could be done, though?" The other party was the girl's father. Ling Han stood up and respectfully said, "Yes, that is who I am." He still had to observe the necessary etiquette. Before, the other party had deliberately given him the cold shoulder, so he sat quietly and focused on cultivating. This was a kind of response and a statement. However, when an elder asked him a question, he couldn't act arrogantly. Shui Zige could not help but be astounded. This young man was only in his 20s, and his cultivation was still at the level of the Shattering Void tier, yet he knew when to advance or retreat calmly in such a dignified manner. Was this the domineering characteristic of a monarch? He felt a slight admiration towards Ling Han, but even so, he wouldn't change his mind. He said, "You are not worthy of my daughter. From today onwards, you are not allowed to see Yenyu again." Ling Han burst out laughing and said, "Lord Shui, you are way too arbitrary. You have the cheek to lecture me?" Shui Zige could not help but laugh. Even a man of the left minister would not be allowed to be rude to an official of the imperial court. As this involved the rights of a nation, even if Shui Zige were to subdue or kill Ling Han, the left minister also wouldn't be able to say anything. "I dare not, nor am I." Ling Han shook his head. "I am just stating a fact. Although my cultivation level is still at the Shattering Void tier, it won't forever remain at the Shattering Void tier. Didn't the 7 generals of the Majestic Empire also start from the Shattering Void tier and work their way up step by step? The same is true for the left and right ministers." What an overconfident guy. Shui Zige humphed and said, "You dare compare yourself to these 9 lords? There is no comparison now, but it may not be the case in the future." Ling Han confidently smiled, but did not say too much, as a person ought to be modest. Yet Shui Zige did not think that he had even the slightest bit of modesty. However, speaking of potential, who in this chaotic star's majestic empire could compare to Ling Han? As strong as Luoba had been, he was also killed in a single blow. With Ling Han having a battle prowess of at least 22 stars, who could compare to him? Even if there comes a day when you reach the heavenly body tier, my daughter's youth will probably have withered away by then. She can't wait, and it's also not necessary for her to wait. Shui Zige waved dismissively. "This will be the one and only warning, do not see my daughter again. Otherwise, I will make you regret it." Ling Han smiled lightly, and said, "Is father-in-law not aware that you are going to be a grandfather?" "Pooh." Shui Zige completely lost it as he directly choked in shock. This practically struck him like a thunderbolt from a clear sky. His precious daughter was actually deflowered by this young man? Not only was she deflowered, but even got pregnant with his grandson? If he were to calmly think about it, Ling Han had just arrived in the immortal realm for only a month. How could it possibly happen? But now that he was completely lost in his own thoughts on the word grandchild, he could barely think straight. "Yenyu," he roared suddenly. Shui Yenyu was waiting at the door. After hearing her name being shouted, she quickly pushed open the door and entered the room, only to see that all her father's hair was completely standing on ends while his eyes were practically spurting out fire. He had completely lost it. She couldn't help but wonder what Ling Han had said to her father that actually caused the latter to fly into such a rage. You, Shui Zige pointed at Shu Yenyu, so angry that he could not speak. Ling Han reached out and said, "Father-in-law, if you are to blame someone, blame me. Get lost. Get lost now." Shui Zige waved them away repeatedly. Now, he only wanted to be alone to digest such an astonishing piece of news. "Let's go." Ling Han pulled at Shui Yenyu and ran. Shui Yenyu couldn't make heads or tails of the situation. Only when they had left the Shui clan's manor did she ask, "What did you say to my father?" "Oh, I was afraid that he would break us up, so I said that you're already having a bun in the oven, Ling Han answered casually. One. What's a bun in the oven? Shui Yanyu asked blankly. She was still very pure, and was totally clueless on the matters between a man and woman. Hee hee. What are you laughing at? Spit it out. It means that your father is going to be a grandfather soon. Shui Yanyu was stunned for a moment before she finally recovered, and her pretty face became filled with killing intent. Ling Han, I'm going to kill you. She began to chase Ling Han, brandishing her sword. Chapter 930, Assassin. Shui Yanyu chased Ling Han for a while, but had to admit that it was actually a very good idea. At least for now, it could silence the Shui clan. Even if the Shui clan wouldn't mind sending her off to the Zhao clan, how could General Zhao accept a daughter-in-law who was already pregnant with the child of another man? Since she'd decided to pretend to be a married couple with Ling Han, she had already felt a certain kind of preparation. However, preparation and getting used to it were two entirely different matters. This was the reason why she flew into a rage out of humiliation, and was chasing Ling Han with killing intent. However, she eventually accepted it begrudgingly. But she was still furious, so she completely ignored Ling Han, and abruptly turned to leave in a huff. Ling Han couldn't help laughing. We were already pretending to be a husband and wife, what difference would a child make? When he thought about children, he couldn't help but miss his son. Would his son still recognize him when they met again? Although he was quite confident, it would easily take more than 1,000 years for one to reach the level of the mountain river tier, and how many more years to reach the heavenly body tier? Even if he was a genius and could shorten the period by 10 times, it would take him thousands or even tens of thousands of years. At that time, his son would already be a great-great-grandfather. There was no use worrying. On the road of cultivation, one had to advance step by step. At least for now, he wouldn't be able to leave the chaotic star's majestic empire. He could only keep saving his strength while figuring out a way to go about it. However, the immortal realm was really too massive. First of all, the Rock Palace was definitely not located on the Joint Peace Planet. In that case, once things involved an intergalactic journey, it would take years a few if the journey was short, but a long journey could take decades or even centuries. Moreover, the corporeal body as such would not be able to directly cross universe. It would be useless even if he could fly by controlling the regulations of the immortal realm, as the speed would be too slow. One had to use a god tool for flying, and a high-grade one that would be able to endure long periods of flying and withstand the sudden outburst of perils in the universe at that. For example, meteoroids, black holes, and the turbulent flow of stars that could make elite immortals be consigned to eternal damnation. Upon entering the universe, there would be no room for fooling around, so one had to be fully prepared. Ling Han shook his head. It would be better to be sure and steady. He'd first advance his strength to 20 stars, and after stepping into the immortal realm, raise his cultivation level via consumption of alchemical pills. Perhaps he might be able to reproduce the miracle back in the small world and attain the level of the heavenly body tier in the shortest time. As long as he could reach the level of the heavenly body tier, he would be able to leave the chaotic star's majestic empire in a dignified manner. Being such an elite, how could he be held hostage? Ling Han felt a sudden apprehension as a strong sense of crisis arose in his heart. His spirit was extremely strong indeed, and could almost emulate one at the minor levels of the mountain river tier. Naturally, he also had a strong ability to sense danger. Swoosh, the cold tip of a blade flashed past, diagonally from the rooftop of a building straight to his chest, where his heart was located. This was a black short arrow, which exuded a terrifying coldness from the tip of the arrowhead. At this moment, Ling Han had to make judgments and choices. The power of this arrow ought to be from someone at the minor levels of the mountain river tier. He had exchanged blows with Shui Yanyu, so he was able to make such an assessment. The problem was whether this arrow was made of godly metal, and whether it could penetrate his body. He couldn't help but clench his fists. Xiao, as the arrow landed, Ling Han's entire being was directly jolted until he was flung into the air. Peng, He somersaulted in the air for a few times before falling onto the ground, where blood immediately gushed out of him. Hee hee. A man in black clothing jumped down from the top of the building. His body was light, and he did not make even the tiniest bit of sound. Even his face was covered with a black cloth, revealing only a pair of sparkling eyes. He was merely at the level of the shattering void tier. Was I a bit too cautious? The man in black said to himself as he pulled out a short blade and walked toward Ling Han with the intention of severing Ling Han's head. As an assassin, if he didn't bring back the target's head, how could he prove that he was the one who had assassinated the target? He walked to Ling Han's side, grabbed the other party's hair, and was about to slash his blade across his neck. All of a sudden, however, he was shocked Ling Han's chest wasn't stabbed with an arrow. Being an assassin with a rich combat experience, his ability of adapting to sudden accidents was also extremely swift. He covered his entire body with origin power at once, and his right hand which held the short blade proceeded to slash towards Ling Han's neck. He didn't know how Ling Han had managed to escape that arrow, and even deliberately fooled and led him to a trap, but when a cultivator of the mountain river tier came up against another of the shattering void tier, the latter would definitely be crushed. At such a close distance, what kind of tricks could the other party play? Even if worse came to worst, he had also used origin power to cover his entire body. Even if 1,000 cultivators of the shattering void tier were to simultaneously strike against him, it also wouldn't hurt him. In any case, he was already standing in the safest and most advantageous position. However, could things really be as what he had expected? Ling Han revealed a smile. Suddenly, he condensed the strength of his spirit, and directed it towards the other party. 7-kill subduing soul technique. Hong, with the spiritual attack, the black man immediately showed a trace of confusion, and fell unconscious. Ling Han seized this opportunity to wrap the other party with his divine sense, and put him inside the black tower. Ding! It was at this moment that the short blade cut across Ling Han's neck. But inside the black tower, Ling Han was a true god. As it fell to the ground, this short blade immediately turned to powder. So what if it was made of godly metal? Ling Han suddenly had a thought, and condensed the metal powder back together again. He should not to waste it, could recast it to make an arrow. Now, his strongest killing technique was the annihilating dragon star arrow, but there was a huge problem. Shooting an arrow was equivalent to shooting away a great amount of wealth. With Ling Han's current strength, the 7-kill subduing soul technique would only have a momentary effect on an elite at the minor levels of the mountain river tier. The man in black immediately regained his consciousness, and could not help but sneer, "I've underestimated you. Not only are you extremely daring, your defense is so amazing that you could take one hit from my arrow but not get wounded. Hey, where is this place?" He immediately expressed shock. This place was definitely not the former alley, but some boundless grassland. It transformed? Or, was this the art of illusion? Ling Han gave a slight smile. His body could naturally take a hit from a cultivator at the minor levels of the mountain river tier. It was difficult to disperse the power from the hit, so he was flung into the air. However, he still managed to control it. When he landed on the ground, he took the opportunity to hide the arrow inside the black tower, and then used the blood of a demonic beast to replace his own blood in order to make the other party think he'd been hit. It was all brainstormed and executed in a flash. Even Ling Han was extremely satisfied. A cultivator of the mountain river tier had been captured alive. How could he get close to the other party if he did not cause his opponent to let down his guard? Even if the 7-kill subduing soul technique was effective, he also wouldn't be able to get close to the other party. By the time he'd rushed to the other party's side, the latter would already have regained consciousness. After getting hit once, it would be difficult to make the other party fall for the same trick twice. Ling Han had undoubtedly created a miracle, had captured a cultivator of the mountain river tier despite only being at the level of the shattering void tier himself. Even if he were to speak of this to anyone, no one would believe him at all. Wouldn't this be an inconceivable fantasy? It was akin to a cultivator of the body refining tier being able to kill another of the shattering void tier. It was simply ridiculous. You didn't just underestimate me, but practically look down on me. Ling Han shrugged. Tell me, who sent you to kill me, and what is your identity? Haha. The man in black sneered. Was this not the biggest big joke? The other party was actually interrogating him, a shattering void tier cultivator? His expression turned serious, and killing intent burst from him. Cut the crap, let me send you to hell. Chapter 931, Ninth King. The black-robed man moved, and delivered a palm strike in Ling Han's direction. Ling Han neither dodged nor ducked, and allowed the other person to land a direct hit. Utterly calm, he said, "You are now in my grasp. If I want you to live, you will. If I want you to die, the only path that lies ahead of you is death." Peng, this palm strike landed solidly, but Ling Han did not take even half a step back, as if the man had just given him a light pat. How could this be? The black-robed man was so shocked he felt his hair stand on ends. This had surpassed his imagination, and he felt a fear of the unknown rise up in him. Ling Han smiled, and said, "Welcome to my world." Illusion, this all must be an illusion. The black-robed man took a few consecutive steps back. He'd experienced a momentary loss of consciousness just now. It had to be in that instant that he had fallen into this trick. Everything he saw and felt now had to be false. Ling Han stretched out a hand and pressed down as he said, "Looks like I will have to deal you some serious punishment first." How strange. I am obviously not one who enjoys employing violence, so why would there always be someone to force me to do so? Hong, a huge mountain appeared, and pressed down on the black-robed man. The black-robed man was abruptly, and undoubtedly, crushed onto the ground. The mountain was like godly metal, its weight frighteningly heavy, and the black-robed man had no choice but to employ his full effort to stand up against its weight. Yet, his whole body was staggering and on the verge of collapse. He absolutely would not be able to hold on for long. Ah, a terrible scream burst out of him as over a dozen bones in his body were instantly broken. Ling Han, meanwhile, raised his hand slightly to avoid directly crushing him to death. Ling Han waved his hand once more, and the black cloth on the black-robed man's face instantly vanished, revealing an extremely common-looking face. Walking on the streets, he belonged to the category that wouldn't even garner a second look. But one had to understand that once one had reached immortal level in his cultivation, he would naturally bear an unearthly air, and could hence be easily differentiated from normal mortals. Strange. Ling Han's curiosity was stirred. Sitting down cross-legged on the ground, he asked, "You are an assassin, correct? You have deliberately cultivated some kind of cultivation technique that allows you to look more ordinary." The black-robed man merely yowled in pain. As an assassin, before learning assassination techniques, he had to first experience various torture, and he would only be accepted after he had successfully passed through them without breaking. It was to ensure that even if he failed his mission, he would not reveal the secrets of their organization. Although he was screaming very terribly, he did not have the slightest intention to beg for mercy. Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, "Here, I am a real god. There are only things I haven't thought of, but none that I cannot do. If you endure so well, then I'll try out all the punishments I can think of on you." As he continued to cruelly torment the black-robed man, he continued cultivation. In any case, he could not waste the time. The black-robed man was very determined, but after half a day, he gave up. In the Black Tower, his pain was magnified 100-fold. Even using a small knife to lightly cut his skin brought him pain that sank right to his bones and straight into his spirit, causing the willpower that he was so proud of to crumble completely. "My name is Meng Yi, a junior assassin of the Dark Night Hall," he spoke, his eyes staring straight ahead like an idiot's. Ling Han listened. So it turned out that someone had made a request to the Dark Night Hall, giving out 10,000 true origin stones as a reward for his life. This was an incredible amount, yet it was offered only to take the life of a shattering void tier cultivator. Those in the minor levels of the mountain river tier, or even middle levels, would become restless to earn such easy money. This was practically a gift. Meng Yi was only a most low-ranking assassin. he naturally could not possibly know who his employer was. He had only been lucky to be the first to accept this mission. Of course, from the look of things now, his luck was actually exceptionally bad. It may be the Luo clan, or Zhao Luan, and could also possibly be the Shui clan, or it could be others who are jealous of me. Ling Han rubbed his chin, and could not help but laugh. He had just arrived in the immortal realm a few days ago, yet he had already made so many enemies that he could not identify who would go so far as to hire assassins to take his life. Was this a success or a failure? It should be a success, right? As the saying goes, only a mediocre person would not garner envy. I am a genius, which is why so many want to kill me. Ling Han was very good at cheering himself up. He sent this assassin into exile in the Black Tower. Of course, he had robbed the latter of all his possessions. There was a sum of 164 true origin stones on him, 17 arrows, and a total of 7 bottles of various alchemical pills. As an elite cultivator of the mountain river tier, why are you so poor? Ling Han shook his head. Really, even he was richer. What he did not know was that Meng Yi had spent all his wealth on those arrows. Every one of them was forged from godly metal, and though the immortal realm did not lack godly metal, and these arrows were only forged from level 1 godly metal, they were still a very great expenditure. Added with the amount he had spent on alchemical pills, it was actually very impressive that he was still left with over 100 true origin stones. Even the Scarlet Heaven Academy only gave a genius like Ling Han a monthly allowance of 2 true origin stones as a reward. Ling Han exited the Black Tower and returned to the academy. This time, the Dark Knight Hall had failed in their assassination, but they would definitely not give up just like this. Hence, the assassin that came the next time would definitely be even more powerful. It might be a middle-level assassin, a high-level assassin, or even a copper-plated assassin. From Meng Yi, Ling Han had understood that the Dark Knight Hall's influence was very powerful, and their branches could be found in practically every empire and city. The assassins in this assassin's organization were divided into 6 ranks. From the lowest rank to the highest rank, they were junior level, middle level, high level, copper-plated, silver-plated, and gold-plated. This hierarchy was not based on the cultivation levels of the assassins, but rather the number and ability of the targets they had assassinated successfully. The more people they killed and the higher the abilities of their target, the higher the grade they would attain. In this way, they could rise through the ranks. Thus, a middle-level assassin could possibly be even stronger than a copper-plated assassin. However, ordinarily, the higher the rank of an assassin, the more powerful they would be. After all, there were few exceptions. Still, it's not a good idea to keep being hunted down, but what can I do? Ling Han scratched his head. It seemed like he really did not have any way to solve this problem, and could only try his best to be as cautious as possible. After returning to the academy, Ling Han tossed all his worries to a side, and focused on cultivation. He was sure that even the Dark Knight Hall would not dare act boldly in the imperial capital. Additionally, he also had the Black Tower, so things had not reached the extent that he needed to worry about danger to his life. 3 days later, Ling Han was summoned by the left minister. The competition between the 3 empires would begin very soon, and the Chaotic Star's majestic empire had to confirm the candidates that would participate in the arena battles. This was a grand occasion. Thus, not only was the Chaotic Star's majestic empire conducting a selection, even the royal empires that were subordinate to their rule were sending out their respective geniuses, determined to exert their own efforts. After all, if the Chaotic Star's majestic empire did not obtain good results, they would be embarrassed as well. This was a relationship wherein glory for one meant glory for all, and loss for one meant loss for all. Ling Han went to the left minister's residence first. Then, personally led by the left minister, they headed to the residence of the 9th king. The 9th king had the surname of Hu and the given name of Feiyun. She was one of the 9 kings of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, and her authority could be claimed to extend to all levels of society. And yet, the unbelievable fact was that this 9th king was actually only in the middle levels of the mountain river tier. The power of the 9 kings was above even the left and right ministers, and the 7 great generals, but Hu Feiyun was only in the middle levels of the mountain river tier, so how would others be willing to submit to her authority? Because she had the protection of the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, that was how. About 700,000 years ago, the Chaotic Star's majestic empire actually had an 8th general, and at that time, there were only 7 kings. The 7th king, ranked in the last place similarly, was only in the mountain river tier, and that general had not taken her seriously. He had even taken liberties with her. In the end, the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire flew into a towering rage, and directly crushed this general, with his whole clan being eliminated right afterward. From then onwards, no matter who it was, they would be respectful towards the 9 kings, because the Empress had said once before that seeing the 9 kings was equivalent to seeing her. Chapter 932, Gathering of Geniuses. The 9th king's manor was bustling with noise and excitement. The left and right ministers as well as the 7 great generals had all brought their personally selected elites over. There were also some government officials that were rushing about for this reason, trying to discover talented people from all over the nation in preparation for this grand occasion that happened every decade. Additionally, the higher-ups from the various subordinate royal empires had all brought the geniuses of their own. If they could represent the Chaotic Star's majestic empire in the battles, it would naturally be a great honor, and if they could lead the other geniuses and help the Chaotic Star's majestic empire attain the first place, that would even lead to a tremendous reward from the Empress. The Empress was sacred and virtuous. Not only was she the dream lover of all, she was also a supreme idol, and represented the ultimate pinnacle of cultivation and strength. Everyone had gathered inside a garden. There were many chairs temporarily arranged here, but only the higher-ups were qualified to sit, whilst those in the shattering void tier like Ling Han could only stand. Many people had gathered, merely shattering void tier cultivators numbered over 100. In the end, though, only 10 could represent the Chaotic Star's majestic empire in the upcoming contest, so the competition was extremely fierce. Li Weiwei had come as well. Naturally, she was here just to enjoy the excitement. However, because of her high status, endless people approached her to strike up a conversation. If they could marry the daughter of the left minister, they would achieve meteoric success in the later half of their lives. Ling Han found a rock to sit down on in a corner, his eyes slightly closed. He was circulating the 6 techniques returned to 1 to absorb the spiritual qi in the air. Although the effect of this kind of cultivation was not the best, he needed to make every second count. Wasting the slightest bit of time would be despicable. Ha ha ha, with Yang Zi, here, our Chaotic Star's majestic empire would definitely be able to get the first place this time round, a young man with a sturdy build announced loudly, appearing to be filled with confidence. Who is he? Someone on the sidelines asked. Oh, just a country bumpkin from the Black Flame Nation. Still, his ability is quite extraordinary as he has advanced to 20 stars of Shattering Void tier. Hiss. Even though Luo Ba and Yi Qingyun both possessed battle prowess of 21 stars of Shattering Void tier, and Ling Han was capable of killing them both in an instant, in the Chaotic Star's majestic empire or even the whole joint peace planet 20 stars of Shattering Void tier was still a very tall peak that very few could climb. Hence, once they heard that this Yang Zi actually had battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier, everyone naturally inhaled sharply, and accorded him great attention. Ma Xing walked over. He had also been selected by an official as a prospective representative in the competition. After all, there were too few people that possessed King's Qi. He walked to Ling Han's side, and said, "They are all sitting and food is served to them, while we can only stand around. This is really too displeasing." They was naturally referring to the left minister and the others. Ling Han could not help but grin. He had not thought that there would be so many gluttons in this world. This Ma Xing was also an amazing character. Even in such a situation, all he thought about was food. He could really be considered a weirdo himself. The 9th king arrives. It was at this moment that they heard a female servant announce the host's arrival loudly, her tone firm and voice as loud as thunder. Astonishingly, she was an elite of the Sun-Moon tier. Everyone stood up hurriedly. Even the left and right ministers, as well as the 7 great generals, were no exception. The Empress had said before that seeing the 9 kings was equivalent to seeing her. Now that the 9th king had arrived, it was equivalent to the Empress herself arriving, and who would dare remain seated in her presence? In front of the eyes of the masses, a young woman in purple robes walked over from the entrance to the garden. She looked to be only 18 to 19 years old, and was wrapped by a well-fitted long skirt, which beautifully emphasized her shapely figure, her exquisite curves on full display. This woman was very beautiful. Even compared to Shui Yenyu, she was not the slightest bit inferior, yet she seemed to lack confidence. Being the focus of attention of so many people, a flush immediately rose up on her beautiful face, revealing her bashfulness. She was a little shy, and when she reached the seat of the host, she gestured with her hands, and said, "Spare me the formalities, all the lords." Ling Han smiled in spite of himself. The 9th king, with her noble status, was someone that even the left minister had to look up to, yet she was actually a little woman that seemed to be so easily embarrassed like this. How amusing. And yet, the left and right minister and the others dared not be rude. They respectively paid their respects once more before finally sitting back down, giving her adequate respect. For elites like them, something that happened 700,000 years ago might as well have happened just recently. Who would want the present 7 generals become 6 generals, or the left and right minister become a single minister? There is still half a month before the competition between the 3 empires begins. Today, we need to select the 10 representatives that will be participating on behalf of our empire. The 9th king had gotten slightly used to the environment. Although her beautiful face was still a little red, at least she was no longer talking with a stutter. I, under the command of Big Sister no, Her Imperial Majesty, am responsible for selecting the 10 geniuses that will represent our empire in the competition. She accidentally let something slip, and her small face was completely red all of a sudden, making those who saw her feel sympathy. She was really an alluring little demon. The left minister and the others were not surprised. The 9 kings and the Empress addressed one another like siblings, and they had never avoided this issue. This was also the reason why the 9 kings possessed such high status. Then, let's begin, the 9th king said. She had servants place down 10 chairs in the middle of an open space. The time was limited. After 2 hours, the 10 people that were seated in those chairs would be the ones chosen to represent the Chaotic Star's majestic empire in the competition. The rules were very simple, and that was to fight over the chairs. Although they had to exchange blows in the garden, what kind of great elites were those seated nearby? Any single one of them could control the shock waves emanating from the battle with a single thought, and would definitely not allow the slightest bit of damage to be inflicted to this place. At this moment, no one dared to make the first move. They had to hold on for 2 hours, so those who sat first would definitely receive more challenges, or would even be ganged up on. Why should they not wait until 2 hours were almost up to make their move? Bunch of cowards. Yang Ci strode out, and walked towards the chair arranged in the first position. Hold on. Ma Xing leaped out quickly. I quite like this place, you can go and take another one. He did not like the other man's behavior. Kaka, why don't you switch to another seat? Yang Ci moved, and clawed out at Ma Xing. Ma Xing glared at him, and his king's chi was activated. With the exchange of a single blow, there were images of divine beasts interwoven, indescribably formidable. Pang, pang, pang. Abruptly, the 2 of them had begun fighting. Ma Xing's personal battle prowess was only 19 stars, but added with his king's chi, he was not any weaker than Yang Ci, who had battle prowess of 20 stars, and the 2 of them were stuck in a stalemate. The others, after a momentary hesitation, also began to fight over the seats. Ling Han was unperturbed. All the shattering void tier cultivators here added together couldn't match him even if he fought with only one arm, so he naturally couldn't bother to join in on the excitement. He merely closed his eyes to rest on one side, and intended to wait until 2 hours were about to be over. He would simply grab a random seat. Ling Han, Are you not going to move? A low voice rang out by his ear. Though it was very soft, it was transmitted directly into his mind, and became akin to a blast of thunder. This was the voice of the left minister. Ling Han raised his head to look, but the left minister was completely not even looking in his direction. Fine, it looked like his laid-back behavior had garnered the displeasure of the left minister, so he deliberately sent him a mental message as warning. Sigh, looks like I can only step out. Ling Han walked ahead whilst twisting his shoulders as if he was going through a warm-up exercise. Since he was going to move, then he'd make it a grand one. A smile lifted the corners of his lips. Ling Han stretched out his right hand, and endless power condensed in his palm. Abruptly, all the higher-ups focused their gazes in his direction. Chapter 933, Might of a Blow. Heavenly Body Tier elites would naturally not take Shattering Void Tier cultivators seriously, but the energy condensed in this palm of Ling Han's had far surpassed 20 stars of Shattering Void Tier, which moved even these important people. To be able to surpass the maximum limit on any cultivation level was absolutely and definitely not an easy feat, which implied that he could possibly reach an astonishing height in cultivation in the future. Yi Qingyun was present as well. His battle prowess was 21 stars of Shattering Void Tier, so he naturally had to participate on behalf of the Empire as well. Moreover, breaking through to Mountain River Tier was definitely not something that could be accomplished in a short while. How could it be something that he could do easily just because he wanted to? He had witnessed Ling Han's battle prowess before, and when he realized that Ling Han was about to make a move, he was instantly scared so much that his hair was on ends. Immediately, he leaped out of his chair as if a fire had been lit under him, ran for his life. As the greatest elite in the Shattering Void Tier division of the Eastern Institution, his abilities were known to all. Hence, it was natural that no one would challenge him once he sat there. To pull a person with battle prowess of 21 stars of Shattering Void Tier off his pedestal, one would at least need 10 people with battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void Tier to join forces to succeed. There might not even be 5 people with battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void Tier here, so who would be foolish enough to challenge him? But with this escape of Yi Qingyun, a great many were confused. Had he been possessed? It was at this moment that Ling Han delivered his palm strike. Hong! A flash of golden light swept over. Pang, pang, pang. Everyone was sent flying as if they were flowers scattered by a divine fairy, flying to all corners. Some collapsed onto the ground, some were crushed down by their chairs, and some fell into the bushes. All in all, aside from Yi Qingyun, who'd had enough foresight and managed to flee in time, the others were all tossed over. The majority directly passed out, a rare few were still conscious, though their faces were filled with shock. This was a little too strong, wasn't it? A muscle in Yi Qingyun's cheek twitched. He'd known that this blow from Ling Han would definitely be very powerful, but he still could not help but feel a shudder in his heart once he had witnessed it with his own eyes. Was this really something a Shattering Void Tier cultivator could accomplish? Monster, this was too monstrous. The left minister was also slightly shocked. He only knew that Ling Han had come through opening the sky, so his abilities had to have reached 20 stars, which was enough to win honor for him. But, how could he have imagined that Ling Han would actually be as fearsome as this? When he was young, did he have that kind of ability? The left minister could not help but shake his head. This was the first time that he really looked at this young man. He had really underestimated this emperor that came from a small world. Perhaps, in future, he might be able to become a supreme elite. This thought merely streaked past in the left minister's mind, but he immediately broke into a short laugh. Being strong presently did not mean that one would definitely be strong in future. There were a great many fallen geniuses in this world. It could even be claimed that the world lacked geniuses the least. Yet, there were pitifully few geniuses that could attain the pinnacle. There were even a great many that many did not have an optimistic opinion about, and were not categorized amongst the top-grade elites. On the path of martial arts, there were too many accidents. He had really thought too much. At least 1,000,000 years had to pass before a heavenly body tier elite could appear, and there were pitifully few of them. However, it had to be admitted that the present Ling Han was definitely forceful, showing an invincible, elegant bearing. He lifted up a chair, and sat down alone just like that. There was absolutely no one that could equal him. The ninth king's small mouth assumed an O shape, while her eyes widened. She was still young, and did not think so far ahead. She had merely been stunned by this strike from Ling Han. Great! Awesome! She clapped her hands and kicked her legs, like a naive, pampered little girl. This attracted the attention of everyone. She quickly stuck out her small tongue, and appeared to be even more childish. Only now did Yi Qingyun return, hissing through his teeth. He also pulled up a chair, but did not dare to sit right next to Ling Han. Instead, he placed the chair a bit behind of Ling Han's seat. Those that were still conscious on the ground slowly got back to their feet, and each lifted up a chair to sit down on. Like Yi Qingyun, none of them dared to sit lined up with Ling Han. This was the respect that they should accord a man stronger than them. Ling Han's strength had already far surpassed the level they were on. Upon counting, there just happened to be 10 of them, so there was no need for further battles. This caused the left minister and the other higher-ups to be slightly stunned. Could it be that when Ling Han delivered his blow, he had already planned this out? If that was the case, the ability of this young man had to be given a slightly higher estimate. However, Ling Han had not deliberately done so. He had merely controlled the power behind this palm strike so the people who were the strongest would not pass out. He had not foreseen that there just happened to be 10 of them altogether. Thus, Ma Xing, Yang Xi, and the others were all seated. The right minister and the 7 great generals all cast a few more looks at Ling Han. Such a monstrous shattering void tier cultivator moved even them slightly, and they remembered his name. But that was the only thing they did. Meanwhile, the 9th king appeared very excited, and asked Ling Han, "What is your name?" Ling Han stood up, being neither servile nor overbearing, and replied evenly, "I am Ling Han." The 9th king could not help but begin clapping her hands again. "This time, we will definitely be in first place. Hee, this is the first time I have done something so well for big sister. In future, no one would be allowed to call me little idiot." Once she had said so, she immediately stuck out her tongue. She had once again embarrassed herself. All right. You can all go back." She quickly began chasing them out, naturally not hoping for others to laugh at her. None of them dared to disobey, so everyone swiftly departed. The command of the 9th king was equivalent to the command of the Empress, and no one could disobey. In the top 10, there was a total of 7 that came from the Scarlet Heaven Academy. The other 6 all followed behind Ling Han respectfully, their eyes were even filled with fanaticism. They had reached the height of battle prowess of 19 stars or even 20 stars, and were thus deeply aware how difficult it was to reach or surpass this limit. Naturally, they were filled with admiration and respect for Ling Han. The might of that palm strike previously was practically something to marvel at, like it was a divine feat. As they passed, they, like subordinates, flanked Ling Han as he entered into the academy. This scene caused those who witnessed it to click their tongues in amazement. "Oh." Zhao Luan revealed a smile. Like before, he was standing at the bottom of the waterfall. This was because he was cultivating a secret technique. He could not move his body, as he had observed this waterfall and understand a certain rhythm of its movement. This person from a small world, his battle prowess has actually exceeded 20 stars? He appeared slightly surprised. Zhao was presently relating the event that had happened just a few days ago. "Yes, young master," Zhao said respectfully, a sliver of admiration in his eyes. The ability of this ant from a small world had slightly exceeded his expectations. Luo Ba was eliminated in a single strike, and he had become a competition representative for the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. Since he has gained the right to participate, it would not be so easy to kill him. Otherwise, if the Empress lays the blame, when Zhao Luan spoke about this, he could not help but feel a shudder. Even for a genius like him, his heart would shudder at the mere mention of the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. In the hearts of all the citizens of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire was a being that was eternally invincible, and could never be surpassed. "Young master, what do you plan to do?" Zhao asked. He understood this young master of his. He would definitely not spare Ling Han just like this. Zhao Luan laughed loudly, and said, "We shall temporarily spare his life, and kill him once the competition between the three empires is over. However, we cannot let him off so easily. You go and make some arrangements." He began to issue his orders. Zhao's lips curled up in an uncontrollable smile as he said, even if that brat manages to safely pass this night, he would garner the hatred of the Western institution." Chapter 934, Battling the Western Institution. Ling Han was cultivating in his rooms, his heart calm. He was progressing further and further on his 6 techniques return to 1, and added with the fact that he had money, allowing him to purchase enough alchemical pills, his strength was improving at an astonishing rate. At most in half a year's time, or even in a shorter period, he would be able to reach the maximum limit of strength of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier. An attentive expression appeared on his face, but his hair immediately stood on ends. Another person had actually appeared in his courtyard without any warning. This person was clothed completely in black, and a veil concealed his face. He was even wearing a cloak, and not even his figure could be distinguished. Was this another assassin from the Dark Night Hall? However, would the Dark Night Hall actually dare be so bold, actually making their move even within the bounds of the Scarlet Heaven Academy? Die. The black-robed person humphed coldly, and suddenly moved, sending out a palm strike in Ling Han's direction. The speed, why was it so slow? Ling Han could clearly see that there were even 3 mountains and rivers flickering behind this person, yet the might of this blow was only 22 to 23 stars of Shattering Void tier, and completely did not match the cultivation level of 1 in the higher levels of the Mountain River tier. With a leap, he dodged this blow. Xiao, the black-robed person pursued, and once again delivered a palm strike toward Ling Han. The might behind this strike was much greater, and had reached the level of 25 stars of Shattering Void tier. Only limited to the Mountain River tier cultivators, it would be much too easy for them to increase their battle prowess by another 2 stars of Shattering Void tier. It would only be a matter of thought. Ling Han's brow wrinkled into a frown. He hurriedly dodged, and fled out of his courtyard. The black-robed man pursued quickly, and attacked endlessly. However, he did not deliver an attack on the level of Mountain River tier, and was merely herding Ling Han into a specific place. One chased, while the other fled. They were moving very quickly, and in the blink of an eye, they had left the northern institution and were heading towards the west. Ling Han immediately understood. The man wanted to chase him into the western institution. In the Scarlet Heaven Academy, the 4 great institutions were as incompatible as fire and water, and their relations were filled with fierce competition. If a student of the northern institution appeared in the western institution, what consequences would await him? He would be thrashed hideously. The man wanted to use the western institution and teach him a lesson. This man was definitely not a member of the Dark Night Hall. If he was, why would he do something so unnecessary? Moreover, if he really was a man of the Dark Night Hall, how could he possibly enter into the Scarlet Heaven Academy? He would have been killed long ago. But a black-robed man, with unidentifiable origins, was practically committing crime in public. What did this mean? The higher-ups of the academy definitely knew the identity of this person, yet did not make any move to stop him, which meant that they were wary of the backer behind him. Then there was only one person left. Zhao Luan. This person had to be Zhao Luan's subordinate, and the higher-ups of the academy also knew that he would not act recklessly. Thus, they decided to turn a blind eye to the matter. After all, Zhao Luan was the only son of the great General Zhao, who would dare not give him some face. Pung! The black-robed man suddenly delivered a heavy blow. With this blow, Ling Han was instantly sent flying, and crashed heavily into the wall of a courtyard. Who? Who is it? This was the dorm area for the Shattering Void tier cultivators of the Western Institution. Immediately, a great many people raced over, and discovered Ling Han among the ruins. The black-robed man had long since flashed away, vanishing completely from sight. Ling Han stood up. The black-robed man had not used full power in his last blow. However, the strike was too fast, so he could not dodge in time. Naturally, it could not possibly have injured him. Someone from the Northern Institution. It's Ling Han. The #1 student of this batch of new students? Fuck, does he think that he can come and mess around in our Western Institution just because his battle prowess has surpassed 20 stars? Thrash him. There were as many as 2,000 people in the whole Shattering Void tier division of the Western Institution. Moreover, all of them had been in the academy for more than 5 years, so no matter what, their battle prowess had reached 15 stars at least. With so many of them added together, what Shattering Void tier cultivator would have any choice but to retreat? Furthermore, it was Ling Han who had barged into the Western Institution, and if he got thrashed, he would deserve it. So, whom could he ask for justice? He was compelled. Who compelled you? The black-robed man? Were you joking? Anyone could throw on a suit of black robes and he would become a black-robed man. Ling Han smirked coldly inside. He knew that Zhao Luan was trying to make trouble for him. He did not dare to kill him in the academy, but the son of the great General Zhao could mess around and give you a hard time. What could you do about it? If he was not a match for them, he would definitely be thrashed severely, and in the case he won, he would similarly garner the rage of the Western Institution's students in the Mountain River tier. Weren't you acting a little too arrogant, coming all alone to the Western Institution to strut around? Ling Han recalled how Shui Yinyu described him. Zhao Luan was a poisonous snake. This really was a very fitting description. Immediately, a few dozen people rushed over. Now, they had the advantage in numbers, so they were naturally not the slightest bit afraid of Ling Han. Ling Han stretched out a hand, and immediately grabbed one of them. Placing the person in front of him as a meat shield with a smile, he said, "Everyone, I have accidentally lost my way, apologies. I will be leaving now, and we will part with no hard feelings, all right? Humph, you dare barge into our Western Institution, and still plan on strutting nonchalantly out of our territory? Ling Han, aren't you being a little too arrogant here? Would you be able to boast later that you managed to barge all alone into our Western Institution and leave completely unscathed? In your dreams. They all made their moves, but because there was a human shield, they naturally had misgivings. If you're capable, don't take a hostage. That's right, let's have a frank and upright fight. They exclaimed, trying to spur him into action. Ling Han could not help but grin. Several hundred to over 1,000 of you guys against only one of me, and this can still be considered a frank and upright fight? Still, he was really unafraid. Since you all want to fight, then let us have a fight. Ling Han casually tossed the hostage in his grasp to one side. What was there for him to fear? Beat him up. The several dozen people once more rushed over, and even more surrounded them to watch the fight. Even a casual strike from a Shattering Void tier could shoot out attacks from over 30 meters away, but over 1,000 of them were really still too many, and it was definitely impossible for them to deliver their attacks all at the same time. Ling Han clenched his right hand into a fist and punched out. Pung! His strength was really too powerful. A punch from him, and it was like a mountain peak crashing down. Instantly, over a dozen people were sent flying, and directly passed out. The students of the Western Institution were all shocked. What kind of battle prowess was that if a single punch could send over a dozen of them flying? They had been accepted by the Scarlet Heaven Academy, so which one of them was not a genius among geniuses? Let's go, I don't believe we still cannot deal with him when there's so many of us here. Like an ocean, people rushed out towards Ling Han. However, Ling Han merely needed to shot out a punch, and there would be over a dozen people sent flying like they were straws. They would pass out with a single strike, and lose all ability to continue battle. Over a dozen punches later, more than 200 people collapsed onto the ground. Even though there were close to 1,800 people of the Western institution still standing, that was only a matter that could be resolved with an additional 100 or so punches. Too monstrous. How could a shattering void tier cultivator be as strong as this? They were all humans, so why was the difference between them so huge? Should they also squeeze into some small world and learn through experience? Is there anyone else? Ling Han asked calmly, his eyes sweeping over the remaining 1,800 people. Those that his gaze passed over could not help but lower their eyes, not daring to make eye contact with him. He was obviously not equipped with King's Qi, so why did he possess such powerful intimidation? Let's go, we definitely cannot allow him to leave so easily. Otherwise, what would remain of the pride of our Western institution? We must detain him at all costs. Chapter 935, Invincible, sweeping aside all opposition. The students of the Western institution surged forth continuously, dashing forward bravely without care for their safety. This was not a mortal duel. No matter how harsh Ling Han was, he could not possibly kill or cripple them. As a result, they had lost much of their wariness, and aroused their bloodthirst and courage, determined to give this scoundrel that dared not to take their Western institution seriously a good thrashing. Unfortunately, no matter how many lambs there were, how could they be a match for a fierce lion? What more when they could not even be considered lambs in front of Ling Han? Ling Han threw out a careless punch, and the people dispersed like they were flowers scattered by a divine fairy. Peng, immediately, over a dozen people were sent flying. It seemed accomplished very easily, and was not the slightest bit difficult. Senior brother Zhao, it's all up to you now. Everyone turned their eyes to a thin young man. He looked like a bean sprout, and his whole body looked like it was skin wrapped over bones. This young man nodded, and suddenly took a deep breath. Peng, his left shoulder and hand seemed to have been pumped full of air, and abruptly enlarged. Then, it was his right arm, torso, his two legs. Only his head still maintained its original appearance. Abruptly, he had transformed from a bean sprout into a 9-meter-tall giant. His muscles were bursting, and reflected light as if they were covered in a layer of oil. Senior brother has cultivated an incomplete heaven-swallowing technique. Normally, he only has battle prowess of 18 stars, but once he explodes, his battle prowess can reach 21 stars, or even more than that. Humph, senior brother Jia's talent is not weaker than Yi Qingyun's in the first place. However, Yi Qingyun could attain 21 stars of battle prowess in normal condition, whereas senior brother Jia's exploded battle prowess will definitely be capable of surpassing him. 22 stars. Everyone was filled with anticipation. Their senior brother Jia should be able to save the day, suppressing Ling Han so that the Western institution would not continue being embarrassed. Peng! 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 Senior brother Jia rushed out towards Ling Han. His current figure was huge and frighteningly heavy. Every step he placed on the ground was as loud as a clap of thunder, and even the ground itself was trembling as if it would split open at any moment. With him rushing forth like that, everyone else raced away. Senior brother Jia was too strong now. They would suffer even if merely the shock wave swept over them. Hong! Senior brother disciple Jia shot out a punch, aiming at Ling Han's head. In front of his colossal body that was 9 meters tall, Ling Han was practically like a newborn, pitifully small. Thrash him to death, the masses cheered. Ling Han was slightly surprised. The battle prowess this giant exploded with had actually surpassed Yi Qingyun's. Unfortunately, he had obviously used a kind of secret technique to forcefully boost his battle prowess, and could only maintain his boosted battle prowess for a pitifully short time. Yet it was precisely because of that the focused explosion of battle prowess would naturally be incomparably terrifying. Still, compared with Ling Han, this bit of battle prowess was absolutely not enough. Ling Han stretched out his hand, parrying lightly. The fist that senior brother had shot out could not descend any further once it had arrived right on top of Ling Han's head. But, because their two figures were completely unequal, while this fist from senior brother Zhao was frighteningly huge, covering Ling Han's head, others would not be able to see the real situation. Many of them thought that Ling Han had been hit, and could not help but begin cheering. They roared for a while, but when they discovered that Ling Han was still standing firm, they could not help but look stunned. Was this guy a monster? Ling Han lifted his hand, and senior brother Jia's massive torso was raised high above his head. He was like an ant lifting up a huge lion, making for a bizarre and disharmonious scene. Go! Ling Han swatted his hand, and Xiao, senior brother Jia, was tossed away. He landed heavily on a wall, and stopped with a bang. Pooh! Senior brother Jia let out a shockingly loud fart, launching his whole person up into the air. However, his body was quickly shrinking, and in an instant, he returned to his original size. His battle prowess had also returned to 18 stars of shattering void tier. Even someone as strong as senior brother Jia was no match for Ling Han. Finally, the students of the Western institution became afraid. The person they were facing was no ordinary genius. An advantage in numbers was not the slightest bit useful in front of this monster. Ling Han cracked a smile, and asked, "You still want to fight?" They all looked at the people who were lying all over the place. By now, the number had surpassed more than half of them, yet Ling Han was still looking as if he hadn't even warmed up yet, completely unruffled and calm. They shook their heads simultaneously. They were not going to fight anymore. This guy was too monstrous. Their best bet was to wait for this monster to advance into the Mountain River tier so that they could ask their senior brother and senior sister disciples in the Mountain River tier to deal with him. If we aren't going to fight anymore, I'm going back to sleep. Ling Han did not say any more words of apology. He had already thrashed more than half of the people of the Western institution onto the ground, so if he said anything along the lines of apologies, it would be as if he was showing off, having the opposite effect. He left, his arms crossed behind his back. The people of the Western institution could only watch helplessly, their eyes shooting fire. Actually, Ling Han himself was also very displeased. Although he had really shown off his might here, he had been forced to do so. Zhao Luan, looks like our feud is established. Ling Han thought. Did he have the ability to oppose Zhao Luan now? No. Setting aside Zhao Luan, even the 3 great followers beneath him, as well as the subordinates below these followers, were people he was no match for. There was nothing that could be done. The gap between the Mountain River tier and Shattering Void tier was too massive. I have to rush up to the Mountain River tier. Then, with my potential, it would definitely not be difficult to become a 5-star genius. Then, would be able to match an opponent in the middle stage of the middle levels of the Mountain River tier when I myself am in the lower levels. At least I would not be so passive. Zhao Luan resents me because of senior sister Shui, so she would be his weakness. Then, I will pretend to be intimate with senior sister Shui to get back at him. I'm not someone who doesn't take revenge when he should. On the second day, the monthly assessment that took place once every month in the Northern Institution began. This was to assess everyone's abilities and check whether they had improved or degraded. After all, there were some that had entered into the academy with gritted teeth after they successfully enrolled into the academy. It could not be helped that they would relax and no longer work hard at cultivation. So, it was possible for their abilities to not rise, but instead fall. The path of martial arts was an uphill battle. If someone's ability declined, the first time would garner them a warning, the second time would result in elimination of all favorable conditions, and the third would lead to expulsion. Thus, the monthly assessment was still quite important. Over 500 new students arrived. Shui Yenyu's eyes swept once over each person's face, and she said, "Today, the monthly assessment will be conducted. Everyone must put their full effort into it. If you perform worse than when you entered the academy, you will receive a warning from the academy, and after 3 times, you will be directly expelled." Yes, they all answered with utmost seriousness. Ling Han raised his hand, stood up, and asked, "Senior sister, if we get the first place, is there any reward?" Shui Yenyu shook her head, and answered, "No. No reward?" Instantly, Ling Han lost all interest. Sprawling out on the table, he dozed off. If there was no reward, what motivation was there for him to do well? Looking at his laid-back appearance, Xue Yanyu could not help but feel irritated. This guy, his ability was obviously so strong, so why did he not have the slightest bit of assertiveness? Where was your sense of responsibility? If it weren't for the fact that this guy was her husband in name, she would really not bother herself with him. Let's begin, she declared, displeased. This so-called test, in simple terms, was a fight. If that was not the case, what else could it be? Yet no one dared to challenge Ling Han. They had all agreed tacitly that he was in the first place. What a joke. Just yesterday, senior brother Ling had challenged the whole Western institution all by himself. How awesome was that? If you were stronger than senior brother Ling, then wouldn't you have to step out as well if the Western institution came and looked for trouble? Wouldn't that be looking for a beating? Thus, Ling Han had obviously not fought a single battle, but he had automatically obtained the first place in this monthly assessment. Chapter 936, Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm. After the examination, Ling Han deliberately approached Xue Yanyu to ask a question, moving close to her. He was very well versed in cultivation, and had an extraordinarily profound understanding. A few words, and he had already managed to arouse Xue Yanyu's interest. She was completely unaware that she was getting too close to Ling Han. Perhaps, in her heart, she had already tacitly consented to Ling Han having certain privileges, hence letting her guard down. Ling Han secretly laughed in his heart. There's definitely bound to be Zhao Luan's spy here. If that's the case, take a good look then, and quickly go report it. Western Institution. A few young men who had images of mountains and rivers fluttering behind them stood with their hands clasped behind their backs, looking down at a group of red-faced shattering void-tier junior brother and sister disciples, their expressions considerably unpleasant. Just one person, charging in alone, yet the lot of you couldn't even manage to stop him? And not only did you lot fail to stop him, but also let him injure so many people? You bunch of useless trash. Or so these senior brothers of Mountain River Tier reprimanded them. They were all from the lower-level section of the Western Institution. After learning that Ling Han had single-handedly caused a stir in the Shattering Void Tier division yesterday, they had come over today to verify the situation. Could this Ling Han possibly have some kind of superhuman powers? They felt nothing but utter disdain. After all, there were too many students in the Scarlet Heaven Academy, and a mere Shattering Void Tier cultivator, no matter how much of a genius he was, would not warrant the attention of the Mountain River Tier. Hence, they found it incomprehensible. These Western Institution junior brother and sisters were really too weak, actually letting someone so effortlessly come and go, and in so doing inadvertently causing the Western Institution to lose face. Senior brother Lu, that Ling Han is really very powerful. When he dueled with Luo Ba a few days ago, he killed Luo Ba with just a single move. As testified by witnesses of the match. Senior brother disciple Lu, whose name was Lu Heng, had achieved peak cultivation of the lower levels of the Mountain River Tier, and at the same time was also a one-star genius. He was the strongest of these people, and thus recognized as the leader among these few Mountain River Tier cultivators. With a face filled with indifference, Lu Heng scoffed, Luo Ba? One of the so-called three elites of the younger generation of the imperial capital? His battle prowess is merely no more than 18 to 19 stars. In reply to senior brother Lu, Luo Ba had refined a blood-tier stone, and his battle prowess had already reached 21 stars. Previously, he had sparred with Yi Qingyun, which after 3 moves ended up being a draw, a student reported. Only upon hearing this did Lu Heng and his group reveal an expression of shock, for even they themselves had not reached the battle prowess of 21 stars in the first place. Yesterday, senior brother Jia also went all out, but was still defeated by that Ling Han in 1 move, another student said. Lu Heng's expression became more and more solemn as he said, if that is so, then wouldn't that person already have achieved the strength of 23 stars? That is not entirely impossible, a Mountain River Tier student replied. As far as I know, that guy ascended here from a small world, and on top of that, is also an emperor that opened the sky. Senior brother Lu, there's a rumor that if one were to come by opening the sky, they would be rewarded by the heavens and earth. Rewarded by the heavens and earth? Lu Heng questioned. Although he was a genius in the mountain river tier, generally he would not bother with the affairs of a small world whatever for. Opening the sky and being rewarded by heavens and earth. What did it have to do with him? It is said that one could obtain an infusion of strength, thereby making up for the gap in strength of the final 3 stars. Lu Heng was now struck with awe as he said, opening the sky needs the battle prowess of at least 20 stars, coupled with the strength of 3 stars, his battle prowess has then achieved 23 stars. This ought to be inexplicable. There was definitely none among Shattering Void tier that could equal such a monster. Right. He suddenly clapped his hands, and remarked, the competition between the 3 empires is about to start, which also signifies the opening of the Heavenly Sea mysterious realm. Senior brother Lu, what do you mean? Hee, if that guy can enter into the Heavenly Sea mystery realm, then his life and death would be in our hands, Lu Heng sneered. If he is qualified to enter, then we'll teach him a lesson. At the waterfall. In a tone betraying his astonishment and disbelief, Zhao Luan asked, even the entire Western institution could not stop him? The second follower of his men, Biyao, respectfully said, in reply to young master, that guy's battle prowess is suspected to have already reached 23 stars. Without the supportive power of the nation, it is reckoned there are none among Shattering Void tier that could defeat him. Zhao Luan's expression darkened suddenly. When he had been in the Shattering Void tier, he had only reached the battle prowess of 20 stars, yet now there was someone whose battle prowess surpassed his by a good 3 stars. He found it somewhat displeasing. With his battle prowess, this time he would surely be able to lead our empire to win the first place in the competition among the 3 empires. Her Imperial Majesty the Empress is fair and just in meting out punishments and granting rewards where it's warranted, so probably she would bestow upon him a chance to enter into the Heavenly Sea mystery realm, Biyao added. Heavenly Sea mystery realm. Zhao Luan's eyes gleamed. The reason why he had been able to become a 4-star genius had an inseparable relation with his entering into the Heavenly Sea mystery realm in the past, which allowed him to attain a special ability. If he were to enter into the Heavenly Sea mystery realm, then don't let him out ever again, he said coldly. Though he knew Shui Yenyu's temperament like the back of his hand, the fact remained that the recent rumors still made him utterly displeased. Yes. Biyao promptly half-knelt. Time flew by quickly. Ling Han had been very low-key, and remained within the academy, not giving the Dark Night Hall a chance to assassinate him. On Zhao Luan's side, he had also become rather peaceful, and did not wreak havoc anymore. Day by day, the competition among the 3 empires approached closer and closer. On this day, Ling Han was summoned over by the left minister. Tomorrow was the day of the competition among the 3 empires, thus, he was to stay at the left minister's residence today, and enter the imperial palace with the left minister tomorrow. The competition between the 3 empires was held once every 10 years, and the chosen venue was rotated between the 3 of them. This year, it happened to be the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire's turn. Otherwise, they would have had to set out at least half a month in advance. Ling Han, if you perform well this time, you should be able to obtain the opportunity to enter into the Heavenly Sea mystery realm, the left minister suddenly mentioned. Ling Han stared blankly, and asked, My lord, what's Heavenly Sea mystery realm? How dare you? Are you qualified to ask questions in front of the left minister? Xiang Qingyun berated him at once. The left minister smiled subtly, his hand moving in a waving gesture as he said, No matter, no matter. He seemed to be enthusiastically engaged in the conversation as he elaborated, Heavenly Sea mystery realm opens once every 10 years. Within the mystery realm, there is a type of stone, which can help Shattering Void tier cultivators form mountains and rivers, infinitely shortening the time needed to break through and also greatly heightening the rate of success. Given it having such an effect, we all termed it as Mountain River Stone. It is the speciality of the Heavenly Sea mystery realm. As to why it is so, and why it's not found in other places, that no one knows. Some unique mountain river stones even have extraordinary effects. For instance, the heavy origin stone can make the mountains and rivers that you form possess an exceedingly heavy effect. Drawing it out when in combat will cause your opponent to be weighed down by your mountains and rivers. Meanwhile, flame stone will let your mountains and rivers possess an extreme fiery power. There's no object that will not melt away. However, the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm has specific restrictions on a cultivator's cultivation level, and only allows the maximum cultivation level of the lower levels of the mountain river tier to enter. Hence, there are many of those in your academy who purposely suppress their cultivation just for the sake of entering into the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm a few more times. The left minister has spoken a great deal in one breath, a nostalgic expression playing on his face. When I was younger, I did not have much of a background, therefore, I did not have the chance to enter. Otherwise, if I could possess certain secret powers of the mountain river tier, perhaps my battle prowess could already attain the level of 5-star genius. Ling Han was astonished. If even the left minister had such deep emotions towards it, then this Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm was really a place worth going to. Chapter 937, The Stage Battles Begin. The left minister merely sighed, but did not further elaborate on the situation of the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm. Since the left minister did not say anything, Ling Han naturally did not probe for more information. He intended to find out more about it from Shui Yenyu upon his return. They were taking a ride on the left minister's carriage. Its speed was amazing, and they arrived outside the imperial palace in a short span of time. When they reached this point, even the left minister couldn't bring in his carriage. After they had gotten down from the carriage, the guards checked the trio's identities before letting them pass. While we are here, you mustn't speak rashly, the left minister warned severely. Yes. Ling Han and Xiang Qingyun acknowledged. This was the central authority of the entire Chaotic Star's majestic empire, and one of the 3 central administrations of the joint peace planet. The main color theme of the palace was Pin-Kit was quite feminine, but there was no helping it, since the sovereign here was an empress with the reputation of the world's #1 beauty. Even the monarchs of the other 2 majestic empires were willing to give up their territory and throne for her. If she wasn't full of feminine charms, who would be? Ling Han was somewhat expectant. He was finally able to meet her Imperial Majesty, the legendary Empress, and see for himself how enticing and enchanting she was that even the other 2 great monarchs would be willing to become her subjects. Xiang Qingyun also wasn't able to stop himself from hyperventilating. It wasn't that he had never seen the Empress before, but her beauty was too alluring, so much so that the thought of meeting her made his heart beat faster and his breathing ragged. It could be said that anyone who had seen her Imperial Majesty, the Empress, would no longer see another person as a beauty, and could only have eyes for such a stunning character with capability of causing chaos amongst the common folk. Compared to the Empress, the other so-called beauties would totally dim in comparison, and be considered dregs among dregs. Entering deep into the palace, the guards here were substituted with females. It was probably for fear of men being unreliable. If they were the guards here, the possibility of embezzlement would be higher, and in turn, it would be unsafe. The venue for the martial arts competition had been set up in the Imperial training field. Not only was the venue of the competition massive, the seating area for the audience was also very large. There were 4 spectators' grandstands towering above like overhanging cliffs. The one located in the south was by far the largest, like a monarch among them. This was naturally the exclusive seat of the Empress. Usually, only the 9 kings were allowed to go up there. The other 3 grandstands were much smaller. The one located in the east had been assigned to the Emperor of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, the one in the west assigned to the Jade Drop Majestic Empire, and the one in the north would be shared by top officials such as the left and right ministers and 7 great generals. Whenever the 3 majestic empires held this competition, given that this would involve the pride of an entire nation, the standards were extremely high. The other 2 majestic empires had each sent a crown prince to lead their respective teams. Leading the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire's team was the brother of its current emperor, while the Jade Drop Majestic Empire's team was led by their emperor's 4th uncle. They were all powerful bigwigs that stood above all levels of society, and their cultivation levels had already reached the heavenly body tier. Of course, Ling Han wasn't qualified to sit in any of the 4 grandstands. As for Xiang Qingyun, he was only able to stand in the north grandstand thanks to the left minister. Naturally, being at the bottom meant that Ling Han couldn't see the situation at the grandstand high above, which made him find it somewhat regrettable as he wouldn't be able to see the Empress of Chaotic Star's majestic empire even if she had come. It wasn't that he harbored any special feelings for Her Imperial Majesty, the Empress. It was just that he had heard so much about her exquisite beauty being beyond comparison that it made him curious, and he wanted to see her with his own eyes. The contestants of the 3 majestic empires stood on the imperial training field. A stage had been erected in the middle. This was a stage battle. Naturally, there would be rules for a stage battle. Any contestant that fell off the stage would be considered defeated. Otherwise, if one could run away and the other gave chase, then when would the competition be concluded? With the kind of powerful bigwigs present here, how could they spend so much time watching the show of shattering void tier cultivators? Brother Ling, I've just gotten some news. There's trouble this time. Xiang Qingyun suddenly ran over, waved to the other 8 people, and said, "Everyone, come and listen." "What kind of trouble?" Ma Xing said offhandedly. "With Brother Ling here, we will definitely take first place." "That's right." The others nodded one by one. Ling Han's performance had completely won them over. Xiang Qingyun actually shook his head to that as he said, "That's precisely it. I've just received some information, and done my research on the background of the contestants from the other 2 majestic empires. They also have 2 exceptional contestants. Can they be more exceptional than Brother Ling?" Ma Xing said while putting up his hands, seemingly not bothered. Xiang Qingyun shook his head, and said, "The contestant from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire is said to be the descendant of the Peacock Flame King, while the one from Jade Drop Majestic Empire is known as the Big Turtle King, and was speculated to be the descendant of the Divine Beast, Black Tortoise One." At this time, everyone was a little convinced. Once things involved a divine beast, the battle prowess could not be ascertained using common sense. As Ling Han was somewhat intrigued, he said, "That I would like to see." He was so strong that he always had an overwhelming advantage over other shattering void tier cultivators. On the contrary, having another person who could challenge him was actually a pleasant surprise. Being invincible was fucking lonely. Seeing that Ling Han was so confident, everyone's heart somewhat settled down. Although Ling Han did not possess any bloodline advantage, he was also exceptional indeed. "Her Imperial Majesty arrives," a female official shouted loudly, and her voice reverberated above the training ground. Shua, everyone stood up to welcome the arrival of the Empress. Ling Han looked up towards the southern grandstand, yet he could not see anything. He could not help but be disappointed. There was a commotion in the grandstands above. The Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire was not only renowned throughout the world for her formidable strength, her exquisite beauty had even won over the hearts of the other 2 emperors. Who wouldn't want to take another look at her? It was a pity that due to location, only the people on the other 3 grandstands were able to view the true face of the Empress. Let's start," said a somewhat stuttering voice. It was precisely the 9th King's. Sure enough, the 9th King and the Empress were like sisters, and this voice was transmitted from the southern grandstand above. The winner for first place in the previous competition was Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, so they will be defending. The second place for the previous competition was Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire, so they would take the lead in attacking first, while Jade Drop Majestic Empire will be the second to attack. The 9th King had adjusted her emotions, and no longer stuttered in her next sentence. The 3 majestic empires apparently had already arranged the order of appearance for each of their respective contestants. Therefore, when the voice of the 9th King fell, one contestant from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire had jumped onto the stage. On the other side, a contestant of the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire by the name of Mo Xiang had taken the lead to attack. Ling Han didn't pay much attention to it. He would be the last to battle, being the strongest. There was still a lot of time to spare until his turn. He wasn't concerned with how many people would be left on either side. He was searching around in the ordinary stands, and soon caught sight of Shui Yenyu. She had come with other people from the academy. After discovering Ling Han's gaze, several female companions around her suddenly laughed and made fun of Shui Yenyu, causing the beauty to flush red with embarrassment. Ling Han saw Luo lie again. He sat behind several middle-aged and old men. After discovering Ling Han's gaze, his own gaze became somewhat strange. It was filled with anger, but he also appeared somewhat pleased with himself. However, those middle-aged and elderly people cast a cold gaze towards Ling Han, and did not conceal their killing intent in the slightest. They were all members of the Luo clan. So that's the reason why they hate me so much, Ling Han thought to himself. Then you all had better wait and watch me make a sweeping victory, helping you resent me even more. Chapter 938, Invincible Defense? The fight progressed very quickly. Being confined to a small platform left no room for movement techniques to be brought forth. In a matter of a few moves, contestants were already locked in combat at close quarters. It was but a little over half an hour, yet only 3 people were left on the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire's side, and there was not much difference on the 2 other sides either. Facts proved that apart from Ling Han, this kind of monster that emerged occasionally, the 3 Majestic Empire's reserves of top-rate talents were more or less the same. When Ma Xing was also defeated, Yi Qingyun stepped forth to fight. He picked 4 opponents from the 2 Majestic Empires to firstly force the leader of the team from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire out. It was a woman. She was of a slender frame, with features so beautiful they were like art and long hair that fell straight down, touching her rear. Her style of dressing was also very refreshing. Her top was extremely short, and actually exposed a small stretch of her waist, which was fair as ivory and smooth as fine jade. Her bottom, on the other hand, was clad in a pair of leather pants, which were cut off below the knee, revealing a pair of flawless porcelain-like calves, forming a stark contrast with the black color of the leather pants, which made them even more prominently snowy. Her figure was really too perfect. She had a curvaceous plump rear the shape of ripened peaches, so tempting that one just wanted to take a bite off it. The light reflected off her pants made her asterisk appear even more profoundly stirring. Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, Yu Ronger. She cupped her fists in greeting. Yi Qingyun revealed traces of a stunned expression as he reciprocated the gesture, and in return greeted, Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire, Yi Qingyun. Please. Please. As soon as the formalities were over, Yu Ronger immediately launched an attack, her figure leaping forth while giving rise to a stream of light. Her speed was extremely swift, appearing in front of Yi Qingyun in a fraction of a second as she pressed her palm forward. Yi Qingyun was taken aback. This speed was beyond anything he'd expected. Nevertheless, she was the leader guarding the frontier of the opposing party, and he had expected that her strength would be formidable. In any case, he was also someone with battle prowess of 21 stars of shattering void tier, and his strength was astonishingly powerful. He immediately clenched his fist and slammed it towards his opponent. Pung! The fist and palm strongly collided. However, Yi Qingyun was immediately sent flying by the force from the impact, and landed outside the platform. Unexpectedly, he was not on par with his opponent at all. Ling Han's eyes brightened. The battle prowess that this woman displayed was only of 21 stars and slightly above, not even 22 stars yet. However, she also did not draw on any secret techniques at all, which showed that her battle prowess had definitely surpassed 22 stars, or had even possibly already reached 23 stars. With Yi Qingyun's defeat, it was the Jade Drop Majestic Empire's turn to send forth their leader. Jade Drop Majestic Empire, Zhong Hai. He was a man with an extremely odd figure. His stature was not short, yet he had a stooped back, and his back was akin to a tortoise's. Not only was it flat, but it was also carrying a semicircular form. A descendant of the black tortoise. It could indeed possibly not be just mere hearsay. The two then engaged in a fierce battle. From the offense aspect, Yu Ronger had the upper hand, but Zhong Hai had also inherited the tortoise's defensive capabilities. No matter how strong the offense that came his way, he only needed to turn his back around, and that tortoise-like back could easily receive any strike. The only way to injure him would be to draw near and fight him at close range, without giving him time to turn around. But to fight at close range would be too dangerous. It was also not suitable for a cultivator of origin power. It was the offensive tactic of a cultivator of body arts. Yu Ronger's strength evidently went beyond this. She exclaimed softly, "Peacock's numerous plumes, shatters the cosmos." Suddenly, a beautiful spread of plumes appeared on her back, akin to a peacock fanning out its tail in a splash of colors. Next, the total of 72 plumes all shot out directly towards Zhong Hai at the same time. There was no such thing as an absolute defense in this world, only an offense that was not powerful enough. Zhong Hai actually smirked and turned his body around as before, but this time around, his back suddenly bulged, tearing his clothes apart to reveal an oval black tortoise shell. On its surface were divine patterns that were at that moment already interwoven and emitting light. He was obviously at the shattering void tier only, yet he could activate divine patterns. Although it was only a mere few, their power naturally was incomparably formidable. This was precisely his bloodline letting him possess a bit of the power of immortal level in advance. Shio, 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 numerous plumes shot out at the tortoise shell, evoking a dazzling burst of light rays. Numerous plumes swept past, yet Zhong Hai was unscathed. Ha 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 ha. Zhong Hai moved to fight back, but he did not attack, and just used his tortoise back as a shield and rammed towards Yu Ronger. His objective was very obvious. He wanted to knock Yu Ronger off the platform. Then, he could win without a fight. It was very underhanded, but it was very effective. The defense ability of the tortoise shell was too terrifying. Furthermore, there were divine patterns on it. A shattering void tier cultivator being slammed with it once had to be absolutely in a world of pain. When Yu Ronger was forced into a corner, it was also tantamount to proclaiming her defeat. She was knocked down from the platform. Yu Ronger was seething with anger. In terms of real battle prowess, she definitely was not inferior to Zhong Hai, but she was at too much of a disadvantage fighting on a tournament platform, and her powerful attack strength was practically useless. With this turn of events, the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire would be ranked third this time, and could only sit on the sidelines to watch the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire and Jade Drop Majestic Empire contend for the first place. Zhong Hai's manner of attaining victory drew forth a lot of hissing sounds from the spectators. Beauties originally would attract more spectators anyways. Now, everyone naturally had sided and was in support of Yu Ronger. They were all too eager to boo Zhong Hai off the platform. But, Zhong Hai's face was as thick-skinned as his tortoise shell, and he stood on the platform without any traces of shame. Instead, he turned towards Ling Han and hooked a finger at him, a downright provoking stance. "Senior brother Ling, eliminate him." Those from the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire were all furious was too cocky. Ling Han smiled faintly, slowly walked to the front of the platform, and ascended the stairs, appearing to be unhurried and calm to the extreme. "Hurry up. After defeating you, we shall be number one," Zhong Hai said arrogantly. Ling Han did not hasten, nor did he slow down. His spirit was firm. How would he be confused by others? He stepped onto the platform, and greeted perfunctorily, "Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire, Ling Han." "Jade Drop Majestic Empire, Zhong Hai." "Please. Please." Similarly, right after the greetings were done and over with, Zhong Hai immediately revealed a hideous grin. Brandishing a fist, he charged towards Ling Han. Ling Han casually moved his hand in a slashing arc, and drew out a flash of sword chi, effortlessly countering this fist. "You do have some strength." Zhong Hai coldly sneered. His fist just now was merely to test the waters. His expression then showed focus, while his fists clenched tightly. The originally black and white of his eyes had now changed to a deathly white. "Furious sea of fists," he roared, and abruptly his fists struck simultaneously. Immediately, sounds of waves erupted, and the shadow of a tidal wave appeared striking towards Ling Han. Battle prowess of 22 stars of shattering void tier, almost close to 23 stars, Ling Han assessed in his heart. But, how much had his own battle prowess reached now? Go! He rushed out, striking forward with a palm. A golden brilliance surged forth, directly splitting open the tidal wave, and continued to strike towards Zhong Hai. A look of shock immediately crossed Zhong Hai's face. What exactly was this attack of his opponent, actually being able to so easily break through his furious sea of fists? He promptly turned around. This was to play the same old trick, taking advantage of his innate defense ability to get the upper hand. Hong! Ling Han's palm pressed onto the tortoise shell. Both figures were seemingly frozen in their positions, with only the flickering of the divine patterns on the tortoise shell seen. Blocked yet again? The audience were all disappointed. They were, of course, hoping that Ling Han could emerge victorious. Even for those of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire, it was no different. Ka, a crisp and clear sound rang out, and a crack could actually be seen appearing on the tortoise shell. Next, it spread out akin to a spider's web, and in an instant already covered the whole tortoise shell. Then, piece by piece, it broke just like porcelain. Chapter 939, The Empress Summons. It shattered. Tortoise, amongst normal creatures, was the synonym for powerful defense. Even a ferocious tiger or lion could do nothing against the shell of a tortoise. Moreover, after entering the level of demonic beast, the defenses of a tortoise were further enhanced. When a demonic beast cultivated to the highest level, it would be termed a divine beast, and its defenses were naturally even more incredible. Zhong Hai was born different, possessing a sliver of the bloodline of the ancient divine beast, Black Tortoise. This was reflected in his defense. She had a spot on his back that was a so-called god's territory. It was called so because only immortals would be able to break through his defenses. Looking at the platform, all the spectators were gaping with shock. There was even a considerable number of Mountain River Tier and Sun Moon Tier elites that were in disbelief. Ling Han was obviously only in the Shattering Void Tier, so how could his battle prowess be so powerful? On the high platform, the important personages of the Jade Drop and Eternity Sky Majestic Empires even directed a probe at him. Had Ling Han borrowed aid from the power of the nation? But the disappointing fact was that there were no signs of external aid on Ling Han. Furthermore, on their national totem, those 9 mountain peaks, there was no existence of Ling Han's name. Without a name on the totem, he would not be able to draw on power of the nation. This was something everyone knew for a fact. An individual's own battle prowess could also be this strong? This surprised a great many higher-ups because Shattering Void Tier had not yet entered into immortal level, and did not have too great an effect. Thus, even great geniuses only required themselves to achieve 20 stars of battle prowess. There was no need for them to be so stubborn and reach the maximum on this step. After all, the path of cultivation was really too long. Furthermore, no matter how much you perfected your cultivation of the Shattering Void Tier, how many more stars could you increase your own ability to match an opponent on a higher cultivation level than your own? In the Mountain River Tier and Sun Moon Tier, too, could perfect my cultivation, so wouldn't the boost to my battle prowess be even greater? It was precisely because the battles on immortal level were too difficult that raising cultivation levels was the best strategy. Peng, Zhong Hai fell off the tournament stage, releasing a harsh scream in agony. This tortoise shell was a part of his body, and now that it had been shattered by force, it naturally caused him heartrending pain. But the way he had won earlier on was too underhanded, so when the masses saw his pitiful look now, they felt a kind of pleasure instead, feeling like their ire had been vented. The ranking has been decided. In this year's competition between the 3 majestic empires, the Chaotic Stars Majestic Empire is in the first place, the Jade Drop Majestic Empire in the second, and the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire is third. The 9th king's voice rang out from the high stage, announcing the final results. Ling Han, Yi Qingyun, and the other participants were all commended, and each received 100 True Origin stones. This was quite a considerable wealth. They'd merely had to battle once, so this could be considered a hefty reward. Ling Han was just about to leave with the left minister when a palace maid caught up with them. She first bowed, and then said, "Under the command of Her Imperial Majesty, Ling Han is summoned for an audience." The left minister was slightly stunned, but then hurriedly and with utmost respect replied, "Yes." Xiang Qingyun, meanwhile, was about to go mad with jealousy. This lowlife from a small world had actually been summoned for an audience with the Empress. What kind of good fortune was that? Even he had only been able to look at the Empress from afar, and that was only because he was following the left minister. He prided himself over it, but now? This shattering void-tier brat was actually able to come into close contact with the Empress, instantly trampling all over his pride. He was regretful. Why had he brought Ling Han back with him at that time? It would have been better if he had just killed Ling Han directly. Wouldn't it have been all right just to establish a puppet emperor? But now, he could only regret, and did not dare to do anything else. The Empress wanted to see him, and you dared to stand in his way? Ling Han walked with that palace maid into the depths of the palace. It was incomparably quiet here. Aside from the patrolling soldiers passing by, there was no one else. Of course, the soldiers were all female. They were all in small teams of 10, led by an elite who was at perfection of the mountain river tier. The team members were also all in the mountain river tier. However, afterwards, that palace maid brought Ling Han to the doors of a side palace hall. The doors were completely forged from a pink-colored crystal, which looked like a beautiful gemstone. "Reporting to Your Imperial Majesty, Ling Han has been brought," the palace maid informed, kneeling at the doors. "Enter." A dignified voice was heard from within. Yet, there was still incomparable charm hidden in this voice, as sweet as honey. Anyone who heard this voice would feel incredibly at ease. The palace maid nodded at Ling Han, and walked into the palace hall. Ling Han followed her in. He had keenly discovered that there was an imperial guard hidden behind every giant stone pillar, each as wide as 3 meters, and their aura was deep and immeasurable. At least they were not people he could sense clearly. There was a total of 18 such pillars, and they stretched all the way to the end of the palace hall. There was an imperial throne there, and seated high on this throne was a woman dressed in imperial robes. However, there was divine light flickering over her, so her exact features could not be clearly seen. Still, even though she was incredibly blurry, she had a bone-deep charm that would melt anyone's heart. The greatest beauty in the world? It was indeed a fully justified reputation. She was merely seated there, and there was an irresistible grace to her. Ling Han sighed, but still had to kneel on one knee, and said, "This Ling Han pays respects to Your Imperial Majesty." She was an ultimate elite standing at the perfection of the heavenly body tier. She herself could possibly be a 5-star genius, and added with power of the nation, even if not in the eternal river tier, she should at least be unmatchable in the heavenly body tier. Facing this kind of elite, respect was a must. When the eyes of the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire ran over him, Ling Han abruptly felt as if he had been seen through completely. It was as if in front of her, there were no secrets he could hide. "Coming from a small world, you have not had it easy," she said, her voice holding a tone of commendation. Ling Han suddenly felt ecstasy that rushed up to his head, but his heart immediately clenched. Why was it that with only a single compliment from her, he was filled with an impulse that he could die for her? The charisma of this Empress was really too frightening, wasn't it? She had obviously not used any kind of technique. It was only mere words, and added with her own personal beauty, and bearing her beauty was even blurred, it had enchanted him so deeply. It was no wonder that even the 2 emperors in the heavenly body tier were captivated by her. Indeed, this kind of charisma was really too hard to resist. "Thank you for your praise, Your Imperial Majesty," Ling Han said solemnly, his gaze lowered, not daring to have a second look. This Empress was really a great source of calamity. Even compared with the charisma of Shui Yenyu and Zhu Xian'er, hers was far superior. At least, as far as Ling Han knew, the only one able to match, or even surpass, her in terms of bearing was only that previous mistress of the Rock Palace. However, the bearing of these 2 women was of completely different types. Although that person of the Rock Palace spoke gently, she was so elegant and distant that others would only feel reverence and admiration, and not dare to have any other wild thoughts. Yet though this empress in front of him spoke aloofly, she was like a sweet poison, and would make one feel like he could not stop himself. He would be willing to become a moth flying into a flame, not regretting even unto death. This should be related to the cultivation technique that this empress had cultivated. Otherwise, it would definitely be impossible that she would be so enchanting and captivating with her grace. Ling Han did not think that he would be able to resist this empress's charisma for much longer with his present cultivation. Thus, it was best for him not to look, avoiding falling head over heels into her unwitting trap, rendered incapable of freeing himself again. You have saved our empire from a crisis, and won 1,000 slots to enter into the heavenly sea mystery realm. Thus, I shall make an exception and gift you an entry slot, the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire said. Thank you, your Imperial Majesty. This reward was within Ling Han's expectations. Furthermore, would such an important personage like the Empress summon him deliberately just to personally announce this piece of news to him? It seemed like the battle prowess that he had exhibited was too astonishing, and even the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire wanted to see him from up close. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.